Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Dashing towards the Watcher, Lyrica twisted her body and slashed her blade horizontally. Bang. A single slash in her current state was able to send the Watcher stumbling backwards as he was shocked at her strength. Before he could even respond, Lyrica flashed in front of him and twirled her sword. Burning Lotus. There were a few slashes that were close to grazing him, but the Watcher would barely dodge it every time. However, Lyrica continued her endless assault. While it was true that she could only sustain her current state for a short amount of time, the closer she gets to the end, the more power she would gain from her skills. Clang, 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 clang. Looking at Lyrica, who was slowly speeding up, the Watcher couldn't help but want to increase the amount of power he was displaying. But if he did, he would be breaking the rules of the test. His strength was supposed to be limited to the challenger and not above it to the point where she couldn't beat him. His frustration started to increase as he was being pushed back. "Why are you holding back? Fight me!" Lyrica shouted out in annoyance. She could tell that he was keeping his power consistent even when she was using her berserk skills. While she could guarantee a win, she wanted to test her limits. "Since you have given me permission, that is exactly what I shall do," the Watcher said seriously, since it was frustrating to be constantly pushed back. A blue aura burst out of him and had almost extinguished Lyrica's red aura in a single burst. Lyrica was not dissuaded, however. Instead, fighting intent raged inside her. Bang. Crack. Blocking one of the Watcher's strikes, Lyrica widened her eyes when she saw the handle of her sword crack apart. Unfortunately, she didn't have the luxury of examining her weapon. Instead, she quickly shifted her grip and wielded her broken blade normal swords. Looking at her stance, Shiro finally understood what she was missing. The reason why she can't break through into her attack domain is because her weapon wasn't fully compatible. Her hidden proficiency is a mix of dual-ended blades and dual whips. The best weapon for her would be one that could transform between the two, Shiro thought to herself. However, for such a weapon, they'll have to find an extremely talented blacksmith with the equipment to match. Even Helion was helpless at her previous request of the weapon. But once Lyrica obtains the weapon, her overall attack power would evolve. While there was also the option of custom making a weapon for Lyrica with her Snowmancer class, it wasn't a good solution since she won't be there all the time. Not to mention the fact that once the weapon runs out of mana, it would disassemble itself. To make matters worse, the damage isn't reparable since it can only be repaired by her. While she wasn't as proficient with dual wield as she was with her original weapon, Lyrica was still able to hold her own due to her berserk skills. Shiro also realized that Lyrica's glass rose container was slowly being filled up with blood. Ohaya? It's a berserk skill that charges over time? Interesting, Shiro thought with a smile. For skills like that, it is weaker than normal berserk skills, but the power released at the very end far surpassed that of a berserk skill. It was a double-edged sword, in other words. You were weak at the start, but it compensates at the end. Lyrica knew this, hence why she stacked several berserk skills at the start, the result of which would compensate for the weakness of her heart essence berserk skill. But once her skill ends, the backlash would render her completely weak. Shiro thought to herself. Lyrica had one chance to end this, and if she missed that chance, she would lose this fight. Continuing her offense, Lyrica smiled when her rose container was completely full. Leaping backwards, Lyrica gritted her teeth and gripped the container. Shattering it in one go, blood splattered around her and coagulated into armor. The Watcher went on guard, but it was too late since Lyrica had already appeared behind him. Bang. Upper cutting the Watcher into the air, Lyrica gritted her teeth and readied her sword. Rose Blossom, Black Rose. A black aura covered her and started to change into a rose. Scattering into several hundreds of rose petals, they slashed towards the Watcher, surrounded him in a storm of black petals. Wow, Madison muttered, seeing the petals surround the Watcher and attack him from all directions. Che. The Watcher clicked his tongue as he tried to fend himself from the petals. However, they were sharper than he had expected. One of the petals had even managed to rip his left arm off. Frowning, The Watcher ended the test. Asterisk boom. Releasing his aura, the Watcher dispersed the petals and landed in front of Lyrica. Looking at her, he narrowed his eyes before reattaching his arm. Examining Lyrica has passed. Grade B+, he said as he dropped the barrier. For the examinees that have passed, enter the door behind me, and it shall take you to the reward area. As for the chosen one, you will have one more test inside the reward area. The Watcher gestured to the door behind him. Flicking his fingers, he sent the three of them through the door against their will. Rather forceful, huh? Shiro said whilst sitting on the tree branch. This is not a test, but rather request. Would you spar with me? I wish to see the capabilities of your new martial arts that you have developed. The Watcher said with a small smile. And what would I get out of this? Shiro asked as she crossed her legs. Placing her elbow on her knees, she rested her chin on her hand and smiled lightly. A reward? The Watcher frowned. Yes. Surely you're not telling me to spar with you for free, right? Shiro chuckled. Do you not want to test the might of your sword art? He replied, trying to persuade her. Ha ha ha, this princess has many more targets to practice with. Why should I do it for free just because you asked? Shiro laughed. Then what do you want? He asked. What do you have? Shiro grinned. It was the perfect moment to scam something from the Watcher. Narrowing his eyes, the Watcher said before summoning something in his palm. Ohaya? You even have the upgrade orb? Shiro said, raising an eyebrow. The upgrade orb was an item that will help increase the quality of your weapon. The main question for her was how that would affect Ascendant Dream. The best case scenario for her would be to upgrade it from orange to red. Seems like you know what this will do. It will upgrade any purple rank item into orange rank, he said. However, seeing the sudden disinterest in Shiro's face, he knew she wasn't interested. Can it affect said items? Shiro asked after a short pause. Pardon? Can it affect said items? Like a full set of armor. Shiro repeated. Since it couldn't help her Ascendant Dream, she may as well enhance her current set of armor. As it stands, her current armor gave her the bonuses of Mana Leech and Lifesteal. Both these effects were extremely helpful for her, especially since her mana consumption is much higher than average. With benefits like Mana Leech, her effectiveness would increase. Plus, if she was able to upgrade her armor to orange rank, then further augment it with her Snowmancer class, then this would become an armor that would stay with her for a long time. As long as they share the same name and series, I believe this orb should work. The Watcher replied with uncertainty. Since that's the case, I want you to give me something else on top of the orb. The Watcher became hesitant. While it was true that he was eager to see what Shiro could do, the upgrade orb itself was quite precious already. That being said, I don't think I'll be able to see another genius like her in my life, he thought to himself. Sighing slightly, he summoned one more item. The item he held in his hand was a silver dagger. This item here contains the power of a high-level B-rank Dragon Knight. While this item only has one use left, it should keep you safe for a long time, he said, offering the knife and the orb. Looking at the knife, Shiro thought for a moment before nodding her head. Very well, this princess is satisfied with the rewards. She smiled and hopped off the branch. Tapping her necklace, Shiro summoned her swords and grabbed two of them. So, are we just going for a spar? Shiro asked while stretching her body. I want you to come at me with the intent to kill, the Watcher said seriously. Summoning two swords of his own, he took a deep breath. Very well, get ready. Shiro grinned as her entire aura changed. Merciless killing intent erupted out of her as the form of an Azura could be briefly seen behind her. The sheer density of the killing intent caused the Watcher to hold his breath in shock. Come, he said after a short moment to prepare himself. In-style Azura's path, Phantom Path. Her body flickered beside him almost instantly. Everything seems to slow down as he slowly glanced to the side and saw the sadistic insanity that was in Shiro's eyes. Asterisk bang bang. Gah. Just trying to parry Shiro's swords caused him to kneel heavily against the ground. However, Shiro wasn't done. Far from it. Twisting her body, she let go of her swords and grabbed one of the swords floating around her. Shifting her momentum to maximize the force of her swing, she uppercut the watcher and kicked a second sword towards him. Asterisk Poochie. The sword embedded itself deeply into his shoulder. Asterisk boom. Flaring his aura, the watcher removed the sword and gritted his teeth. Twirling his sword in his palm, he stabbed it into the ground. Sword grave. Hundreds of neon blue swords floated up from the ground around him and shot towards Shiro. Grinning slightly, Shiro stomped her foot down and dashed towards the horde. Shifting parts of her body so that they would barely dodge the swords, she was able to close the distance between her and the watcher very quickly. Style Azura's path, Azura sword path. Killing intent drenched the area as the watcher realized his movements were becoming slightly sluggish. Looking at Shiro, who was grinning murderous hysteria, the watcher finally felt fear for the first time since he became the guardian of the springs. Arg! He cried out in pain as the 4 swords cut into him. With every cut, Shiro would rotate between the swords to ensure maximum damage. Her physical strength to attack and mana control to remove the swords. He tried to block her strikes, but a single hit with the pommel of her sword would cause him to break his guard almost instantly. Sword possession. He shouted out in panic since he could tell the fight would end soon if he didn't do anything. A silver pulse was sent out of his body, forcing Shiro to slide backwards. Ha ha ha, entertain this princess more. Shiro licked her lips since she hadn't had this much fun since using her fortress to erase an entire city in her old life. The impact and the force of each strike she sent out sent shivers of joy through her body. No wonder warriors love battle. Shiro thought as her eyes gleamed with excitement. Looking at the watcher whose hair had grown to reach his waist along with a divine sword in his hand, Shiro narrowed her eyes and dashed towards him. Asterisk boom. A single swing of his sword created a ravine that split a portion of the forest in half, but Shiro had managed to dodge it. Appearing behind him, she swung her sword towards his neck. Asterisk clang. She wasn't fazed seeing the sword being blocked, but instead let go of her sword and dragged his hair downwards. Long hair doesn't fit on men. Shiro grinned and kneed him in the back of the leg and forced him to kneel. Flexing her fingers, her sword stabbed towards him from different directions. Tisk, divine sword protection. Asterisk boom. A golden barrier rotated around him and sent the swords flying away. As if grabbing an invisible string, Shiro clutched her fist and sent them back to her side. Jumping over the watcher, she grabbed one of her swords and pushed mana through the blade. A deep red glow started to flicker on the blade. Ha! Swinging the sword towards the watcher, Shiro let go of the sword upon impact, confusing him in the process. However, Shiro ignored his stare as she stepped on one of the floating blades and punched the pommel of her sword using her full power. Azura sword path, piercing the 9 heavens. Asterisk boom. Crack. The watcher widened his eyes in shock, seeing a large portion of his torso missing in an instant. Looking at the damage, he could tell that the sword had rotational power in order to increase its effectiveness. Before he could even stand up, 2 flashes of sword light filled his vision and cut his arms off. Tilting his head up, he opened his mouth, but no words came out. Looking at Shiro, he simply had no words. White hair flowing behind her while blood covered her parts of her body to create a devilish contrast. Eyes that enjoyed the feeling of slaughter, along with a maniacal grin that sent shivers down his spine, made his blood run cold. And yet, when paired with her unrivaled beauty, he couldn't help but be enamored by the scene. Simply perfect, he thought. Even if he was currently kneeling in defeat, he didn't mind watching her like this. Now then, it seems like this princess has won, wouldn't you say? Shiro said with a smile, with her swords floating threateningly beside her. You win. The watcher smiled as he stood up and regenerated his body. You have truly enlightened me today, my princess, he said with a bow. Shiro frowned a little, but decided to shrug it off. Now I believe you owe me my reward, Shiro said as she returned her swords back to their necklace form. Of course. Standing up, the watcher summoned the items and handed them over to her. Since Princess was able to easily defeat me in a one-on-one, Your grade is naturally S rank. However, as you are not the chosen one for some heinous reason, I cannot let you peer into the secrets of the sword myth springs. He sighed with regret. Well, it's fine. It's not like I'm a warrior anyways. Shiro shrugged. Princess isn't a sword cultivator? He widened his eyes in shock. If she was this talented with the sword, logic would have it that she's a sword cultivator, no? Nope. This princess is a mage. Shiro chuckled while storing the items away. Looking back at the door, she wondered what else she could gain from this. No wonder. But even then, it doesn't make sense. Why isn't Princess the chosen one? The Watcher frowned. Even if she was a mage, her class could be changed over to suit the final secret of the sword myth springs. Don't burden me with some crap like the chosen one or whatnot. I had enough of that sh*t before. Shiro rolled her eyes. In her past life, her capabilities as the Snowmancer were highly valued. While the hero did help resolve some of the calamities that would befall a city, she was what the people had expectations for. The burden of needing to look after humanity was an annoying one. If you save them, they'll expect more and eventually, it becomes your natural responsibility. They would expect you to do it without rewards. And yet, when you fail once, they would blame everything on you and forget about all that you have done for them. She had enough of that already. But Princess Dash. Hush. Forget about that for now. Tell me what rewards I get from the spring since I got an S rank. Shiro asked. Since Princess was able to get the S rank, I'll naturally help you get into the highest possible reward from the door. The Watcher bowed as he gestured his hand at the door. *CRRR. Dust and foliage started to fall off the door. This door hadn't been opened since the creation of the springs. Even the previous examinees that had passed never received an S rank. You are the first, my princess. The Watcher bowed. Interesting. Shiro smiled. Walking towards the door, she could see a portal on the other side. Before I go, I want to ask a question, Shiro said, turning back just before entering. Ask away, my princess. Were the previous chosen ones all human or half-human? Indeed they were. Then maybe it's because this princess is not human that I am not chosen. In which case, a boon for me. Shiro smiled and stepped into the door. The Watcher paused in shock hearing her response. Princess isn't a human? He muttered in confusion. While the Watcher was digesting this new information, Shiro found herself inside a semi-illuminated cave. Looking around, she could see red plants that looked like a mix between lotus flows and fire. Flaming lotus grass, huh? Interesting. She muttered with a smile. Flaming lotus grass helped boost up one's resistance and power with the fire element. It was also a key component to precious fire-type medicine. However, she only had one use for it, and that was to make the fire burst bullets. Fire burst bullets was one of the best bullets at lower levels. That was primarily due to the fact that it would spontaneously combust inside a victim's body. Against a boss, this was perfect since it would guarantee a critical hit. Crouching near the plant, Shiro dug them out carefully and stored them in her inventory. I'll start making the bullets once I get out of here, Shiro thought to herself before continuing through the cave. On the way, she found more flaming lotus grass and stored them all inside her inventory. Reaching the end of the cave, Shiro saw a statue of a woman clad in armor with swords surrounding her. As Shiro walked closer, something beckoned her to place a hand on the statue. S rank rewards distributed. Plus 300 in STR, AGI, and DX. Sword skill, refraction, berserk skill, soul sword. Looking at her 3 rewards, Shiro smiled in excitement. She didn't know about the berserk skill, but the refraction skill was well known. Sword skill, refraction. When striking an enemy, your sword will create several illusions mid-swing. Location of the sword can be controlled. Cost, 2,000 MP. Duration, a full sword swing / upon contact with a physical object. Cooldown, 15 seconds. With a skill like this, it would make it hard for her enemy to defend against her sword. If they parry too early, she can adjust her swing slightly and attack them. If they parry too late, they'll have to take the full brunt of her attack. Lucky, Shiro grinned happily. Tapping her necklace, she activated the skill and swung all 4 swords, and at the same time. Upon swinging the swords, they gave off a soft golden light before splitting into 3 swords. With a total of 12 swords swinging in sync, even Shiro would struggle a little to try parry it accurately. That only leaves Soul Sword, she muttered before checking its description. Berserk skill, Soul Sword, a sword that represents your nature/soul. By fusing the Soul Sword with the currently equipped sword, you can amplify its power. Plus Soul Sword buff. Plus 15% increase to all stats. Cost, 30,000 MP. Increases as you grow stronger. Duration, 5 minutes. Cooldown, 5 days. Backlash, minus 25% overall stats for 5 days. Ho, a sword that represents my soul, huh? I wonder what that's like. Shiro mused to herself. Shaking her head, she wasn't about to test it out since it would weaken her for 5 days. That kind of penalty wasn't something she enjoyed. Player, Madison and Sylvia have exited the trial. Seems like they've finished up. Shiro thought to herself. That only left Lyrica, but she might take a while since she still had one more trial to take as she is the chosen one. Shrugging her shoulders, Shiro left the chamber and appeared back at the area just in front of the door. She couldn't find the Watcher, so instead, she called out his name. You called Princess? He responded almost immediately with a bow. When my friend finishes her trial, tell her that the rest of us are waiting outside for her. Shiro instructed. Understood, Princess. He nodded. Shiro was about to leave when the Watcher opened his mouth once more. Princess, may this one ask for a favor? He asked. Depends. Can you sign a contract with me so that I become your familiar? He asked respectfully. What kind of contract? Shiro narrowed her eyes. Naturally, a life and death contract for me. If you die, so shall I. If I die, you'll be completely unharmed. He bowed. And why would you want to sign this contract? Because I wish to see the heights that you'll reach in your life. Through all my years of protecting the springs, I have never seen a talent as bright as you, nor do I think I'll be able to see one again. Oh, I don't see why not. Shiro smiled. Biting her finger, she let a droplet of blood float in front of him. The Watcher kneeled down and received the droplet as if it was a sacred object. Drawing a rune on his own forehead, he waited for the contract to establish itself. However, his eyes widened in shock when a black and purple flame burst around him and erased the rune. Rejection? He widened his eyes in surprise. He didn't understand why it had rejected his contract, since one didn't have a limit on the amount of life and death contracts. But when he saw the flame, he realized what could have happened. Princess, could it be that you've already contracted with a beast? He asked. You talking about Little Een? She's my first contract. What kind of beast is she? A kind of bird. I don't know, since her name was just a bunch of question marks. Shiro shrugged. What kind of contract was it? I think it was called a lifeblood contract. Shiro tilted her head as she searched through her memories. Lifeblood contract. The Watcher was shocked, as that kind of contract was more brutal than the life and death contract. Not only is the person's life in her hands, but their power is also funneled into them. The lifeblood contract is a very rare contract that can't be invoked intentionally. Only a few selected beasts can have access to this contract. He wondered to himself. Unlike the life and death contract, once someone accepted a lifeblood contract, they can only take lifeblood contracts from then on. That meant the rejection of a life and death contract. It's a shame, but it seems like I cannot follow Princess. He sighed in regret. Oh well, I'm sure you'll find someone talented in the future. Shiro shrugged. I hope so. The Watcher smiled sadly, since he knew this was probably the last time he'll see Shiro. Before you go, I have one last question. Shoot. Since he couldn't sign a contract, Shiro thought she might as well hear him out. Princess said that she wasn't human. Then what are you? He asked. This princess is a snow girl, a monster that controls the cold elements. Shiro smiled. By the way, keep this a secret from Lyrica, okay? Shiro chuckled before leaving the realm. A snow girl? The watcher muttered. What kind of soul sword will she get? One that yearns for the destruction of mankind, or will it be one that seeks to rule over everything? He mused whilst looking up into the sky. A monster with her kind of personality was rare. No, perhaps her soul will bring salvation instead? Seeing her attitude towards her friends, he understood that she wasn't evil as a whole. She will reach out to those that may need help. However, at the same time, he still remembers the shivers her gaze gave him. Why am I even guessing? My princess isn't someone that can be predicted. Her gaze showed absolute mercilessness, and yet she has the compassion to reach out to people. She even gave this old man pity, seeing that I cannot follow her, ha ha ha. The watcher laughed mockingly at himself. While he cursed the fact that he was stuck here, he was also grateful at the fact that he could meet her. Sure, he could form a contract with someone else, but as a man who was feared by all, he wouldn't kneel before anyone else except his princess. She was the only one in his life to have bested him with ease. Not to mention, she wasn't even a warrior. Shaking his head, he sat himself down and waited for the chosen one to exit her trial. Meanwhile, Shiro had just left the trial and met up with Madison and Sylvia. "What did you girls get?" she asked. "I got a new weapon." Madison smiled and showed her a greatsword. The sword itself was black in color with deep red highlights. A simple swing of the sword caused the runes to light up. The more momentum in the sword, the brighter the runes shone. "Oh, so I'm guessing the sword has an additional momentum multiplier," Shiro said whilst examining the sword. "Yup. This bad boy will hit harder the more momentum I have. If I jumped off the building, I'll be able to display power much higher than my level." Madison grinned. "That's only if you survive. Otherwise, what use is momentum power when you're a meat paste on the ground?" Sylvia chuckled. "True." Madison agreed, since that is indeed a worry of hers. While the momentum multiplier was good, she needed to make sure that her body could take it. "What did you get, Sylvie?" Shiro asked. "Me? I just got a defensive tool that can ward against high-level attacks 2 times. Sylvia smiled lightly and took out a small shield emblem. While the reward was a little disappointing, she was happy that she got something. After all, she couldn't do much in the trial. "Hey, that's not too bad. As a healer, you'll be targeted more if we ever go against other humans. So the fact that you can have something to protect you is good," Shiro said, trying to encourage Sylvia. Because for one, if she had to go through the trouble Sylvia did just to get a protective ward, she'll be pissed to the point that she'll just rob the rewards giver for more items. "You know what, Sylvie? You can get a free outfit from this woman I know. All her clothes are made from monster fabric, so you don't have to worry about them breaking," Shiro offered. She was going to send Aram a text since she did offer her entire party an outfit. Technically, Sylvia was a member, so she could get one. Even if she couldn't, she'll just forfeit her own since she had one already. "Sure, that sounds good." Sylvia nodded. Waking up early in the morning, Shiro sat on the tree branch and waited for Lyrica to exit out the trial. The first thing she did whilst waiting was attempting to upgrade her current set armor with the orb. Unfortunately, it wasn't able to upgrade the entire set, but instead gave her the option to upgrade a single piece of armor, eventually settling with the helmet. Due to the fact that it gave her the biggest INT upgrade, Shiro was pretty satisfied with the outcome. Demonic Blood Crystal Helmet, 1/6, orange. Plus 350 int. Plus 15% mana efficiency. Plus 10% magic attack. Plus 20% life steal effectiveness. Passive skill, Mind Ward. Mind Ward defends the user from a certain degree of mental attacks and debuffs that affect the mind. After upgrading her armor, she started to create the Fire Burst bullets. With her stock of flaming lotus grass, she could make a pretty sizable batch. However, as she was making the bullets, she couldn't help but notice how Lyrica hadn't exited yet. What's taking her so long? Shiro thought to herself in confusion. Shaking her head, she decided to check to see if Lyrica left the trial later today, since she needed to take Sylvia to Aram. "Een," Shiro called out. Not too long after, Een landed on her shoulders and held out her wing for a mana stone. "Che, glutton. This princess is literally out of mana stones at this point. We'll go to a dungeon either tonight or tomorrow for some food, okay?" Shiro said, handing In one of her remaining 3D rank mana stones. She did have a small stock of C-ranked stones, but she wasn't about to let In eat them now. That was due to the fact that the total EXP she could receive would be reduced as she has not entered C-class just yet. Asterisk chirp. In voiced her agreement since she too hated the fact that she had to ration her food. But don't worry too much. Once me and you hit C rank, we'll have an all-you-can-eat buffet, okay? Shiro grinned since she couldn't wait to chow down on some C-ranked mana stones. Asterisk chirp. Yin's eyes glowed with excitement from just imagining the scene. ####. Meeting up with Sylvia at a coffee shop, she led her towards Aram's rented workshop. Now, the woman who you're about to meet might display some unusual items and habits around the place, but you can ignore it, Shiro said as she wanted to warn Sylvia beforehand. What do you mean by unusual? Unusual as in sex toys and other items. Shiro replied nonchalantly. Huh. Sylvia widened her eyes as she couldn't believe what she had just heard. Can you repeat that? She asked with a small smile. Her old shop sold sex toys and sex-related items. Shiro repeated since she understood how unusual it was to ask for an outfit from someone who sold sex items. Taking a moment to digest the information, Sylvia decided to see for herself before she judged. Plus, their group wasn't exactly the most normal, so it was fine to have some weird friends. Arriving at the spot, Shiro looked around and saw Aram sitting on one of the tables. There she is. Shiro smiled. Looking over, Sylvia was surprised seeing an alluring woman with a devilish figure sitting casually at a table. You sure it's her? Sylvia asked nervously since she gave her the feeling that it wouldn't be good to offend her. Yeah, just follow me. Shiro nodded. Sitting down in front of her, Shiro gestured for Sylvia to sit beside her. It's been a while, Shiro. Seems like you've changed quite a bit. Aram raised an eyebrow, seeing her void black irises. Yes, it has. The change also helped me get my voice back. Shiro replied with a chuckle. Asterisk PFFFF. Aram choked on her drink hearing Shiro speak. Before the drink could actually spill towards her, Shiro flexed her fingers and released a chilling mist that froze all of the water. Asterisk clack, clack, clack. Seeing the pieces of ice that dropped onto the table, Aram noticed Shiro's control over her ice had improved dramatically. Well damn, I seriously wonder what kind of background you have. Especially since your talent is by far one of the best I've seen. Aram praised. You know that I don't remember anything from before New York. Now then, shall we get Sylvia's measurements? Shiro shrugged it off. However, Aram wasn't convinced since she clearly remembered her having a reaction to the statue back in the underwater ruins. Plus, just the fact that the item was from another world meant Shiro either had a connection to that world or something to do with the statue. Fine. Straight to the point, huh? Follow me. Aram chuckled and finished the rest of her drink. Walking beside Aram, Sylvia peeked at her figure and couldn't help but compare the two of them together. Damn, she thought to herself in defeat. However, once she glanced at Shiro, she felt a little better about herself. Oi, you just compared my figure to yours, didn't you? Shiro's head instantly turned in her direction as her eyes bore into Sylvia's. Asterisk cough cough. No, I didn't. Sylvia replied hastily. Why is her intuition so sharp? She cried out in her mind. Narrowing her gaze at Sylvia, Shiro decided to let it go for now. She didn't want to waste too much time, especially since she was going to head into a dungeon later today to farm for some mana stones. I'll let you off this time. Shiro frowned before turning around once again. Say, Shiro, why do I feel like you've become scarier now that you've got your voice back, haha? Aram laughed. What's scarier? Being angry whilst talking or through text? Shiro rolled her eyes since using text would diminish the effect. True. Aram nodded since she wasn't wrong. Arriving at the Tailors Association, Aram led them to her rented workshop. The workshop itself was still as cramped as what Shiro remembered, but with the addition of 3 outfits hanging by the side. Yours is the one in the center. Give it a try. Aram gestured. Unlike her current outfit, this was more in the category of casual wear. It featured a simple sleeveless one-piece dress with frills and decorations near the neck and the skirt. It was colored all black while the back of the dress is slightly see-through. Along with the dress came a pair of gloves and stockings that was also colored black. Both of them had a silver bracelet around the wrist and ankle area. As for the gloves, they were the type that was extra long and reached her biceps. "Why is there so much black?" Shiro asked whilst glancing backwards. "Thought it'll look nice with your hair. Plus, you quite liked your current outfit, so I only made a few changes. You can mix and match between the two if you want." Aram replied with a shrug whilst taking Sylvia's measurements. "Well, you're not wrong." Shiro nodded since she did like the color black. Changing into her new outfit, she erected an ice mirror and inspected herself. Not bad," she thought with a smile. "Does it come with some shoes?" Shiro asked. "Look down. The middle pair is yours." Aram replied without looking. The pair that Aram pointed out was some ankle boots that had their heels shortened slightly. While it was shortened, it wasn't to the point where one wouldn't know. Slipping into the boots, Shiro checked them out and was quite pleased. Not only were they comfortable, but because Aram shortened the heels, she was able to still get a good grip on the floor. "I should invite her to the party so that she can make more clothes for us," Shiro thought with a grin. "Say, Aram, why don't you join my party?" she offered. "Nah, I'm good for now. Plus, even if I join your party, it seems like you've got things figured out. Madison can tank, Lyrica can attack, and you can help out with both. Plus, I remember you telling me that your friend here is a healer, right? You've basically got all the bases covered," Aram replied as she noted down Sylvia's measurements. "Well, having some extra ranged firepower like a mage isn't bad either, you know." Shiro shrugged. "I suppose that's correct. Before I forget, you lack a ranger. Getting one would benefit you greatly since they can detect traps and see through stealth," Aram reminded. "So many people to recruit," Shiro said as she stored her old outfit into her inventory. "All right, it should be relatively easy for me to get Sylvia's outfit since I have a spare that would only need a few adjustments to fit her overall aesthetic. Then I'm guessing we're coming her again tomorrow to collect all of them?" "Yeah, pretty much. By the way, you want anything else with your outfit? I might as well do it now since you're here," Aram asked as she sat down on her chair. Nothing really. I like the simple design. If anything, probably a hair tie or something." Shiro shrugged. "In that case, then have two. I got a ribbon one and a normal hairbang made from monster fabric. I used it when I was younger, but I don't use them now." Aram shrugged and passed her a black ribbon and a black hairband. "You liked black too, I'm guessing?" "Yeah. Now get out of my workshop. I need to start making Sylvia's outfit." Aram chuckled and shooed them out of the room. "See you tomorrow," they both said before leaving the room. Storing the hairband into her inventory, Shiro decided to go for a change of pace and tied her hair into a ponytail. With some hair flowing down the sides, it framed her face and when paired with her ponytail, gave her a refreshing feeling. Of course, that's only if they ignored the fact that she was dressed in black from top to bottom. But Shiro liked it since it was efficient on multiple fronts. Not only could she wear it casually, she could also use it during the night to hide herself more. "I'm going to be going into a dungeon for now, so we'll part ways here. See you tomorrow?" Shiro smiled. "I'll see you tomorrow then." Sylvia nodded before leaving as well. Checking her map, Shiro decided to go to a high-level ice-type dungeon to farm since she can control all the ice around her. The ice-type monsters would be at her mercy. Level 50 Luna Ice Forest. A dungeon filled with level 50 Luna Ice Wolves that attack as a pack. "Very dangerous. Don't challenge alone." She muttered the description of the dungeon she planned to attack. Since her main goal was to earn some mana stones, she didn't need to worry about EXP. The best source of D-rank mana stone would naturally be the level 50 dungeons since it is the peak of D-rank. The drop rates and the quality would be much better than normal due to the fact that it is almost C-ranked. Arriving at the location, Shiro instantly drew everyone's attention with her new look. Ignoring the stairs, Shiro looked around to see how she could sneak into the dungeon. "Seems like I can probably drop down into the doorway if I sneak above them," she thought before leaving the area. Style Azurus Path, Phantom Path. Flicking over the buildings, Shiro started to parkour her way down. Landing softly on one of the ledges, she smiled before jumping into the dungeon. Opening her eyes, she could see a forest covered with snow. Her passive was instantly activated as she felt oddly comfortable, as if she was at a long-lost home. Well, this princess is a snow girl. It makes sense, she mused to herself. Jumping up, she balanced herself on a small tree branch and sent out her senses. Since she is a snow girl, by monster logic, everything that is connected to snow should reveal itself. Bingo, she thought with a smile. She could picture a map of the entire first floor with spots of red signifying the wolves. Hee hee, this dungeon might be bad for most adventurers, but to this princess, it's my playground. Shiro laughed before launched herself towards the first group wolves. They were shocked at her sudden appearance but soon reacted by sending out ice magic. Bad move. Shiro grinned. With a simple flick of her wrist, the ice magic shifted targets and shot back towards the wolves. Some of the wolves couldn't react fast enough and was pierced by their own magic. Tapping her necklace, Shiro summoned her swords and embedded them with the metal element, boosting its attack power further. Style Phantom Arts, Azura Sword Path plus Refraction. Her swords gave off a faint light before splitting into 3 copies of themselves. Seeing the swords slash towards them, the wolves didn't know which is real and could only try to dodge blindly. However, even if they guessed right, Shiro could easily switch the location of her sword with one of the refracted copies and slash the wolves that way. In a single short moment, the previously ferocious pack of wolves that could have killed a group of adventurers lay dead in front of her. Collect their stones while I kill some more, Shiro ordered as she didn't bother about their drops. The best thing that this dungeon could give her was some armor, but she already had her set armor that she wasn't about to replace anytime soon. After clearing out the entire first floor of the dungeon, her stock of mana stones had been refilled quite decently. While it wasn't at the level she had hoped, it was enough for her to survive for a week or so. And that was including the fact that she would be feeding the little glutton. However, there had been more benefits to clearing out the entire first floor. Had managed to level up once more, bringing up her level from level 43 to 44. Only one more level till you get another skill, right? Shiro asked, not expecting an answer. Asterisk chirp. Nodding her head, wanted to participate a bit more so that she could get into C rank sooner. Since our stock of mana stones should be pretty good now, we can spend more time on the next floor for you to get some EXP. Shiro said as she turned their batch of mana stones into mana stone lollipops. Throwing one in her mouth, Shiro was surprised to see her level increase to level 47. So I just needed a little more EXP to level up. Lucky, she thought to herself. Name, Shiro. Race, Snow Girl, evolution criteria yet to be met. Title, Shadow Empress, Proficient Monster, 231/500 humans killed. Fratricide, One Woman Battalion, creator of the Frozen Hell series, incomplete. Ice Princess, creator of Style Azura's Path. Level, 47. Class, Snow Girl, Snowmancer. HP, 302, 500/302, 500. MP, 680, 570/680, 570. STR, 1900-2000, plus 100. VIT, 2000, plus 200. INT, 3900-4200, plus 750. AGI, 2600, plus 450. DEX, 2400-2500, plus 100. Def, 700, plus 100. Equals title bonus. Unassigned points, 500-0. Attunements. Glacial Tier 2. Lightning Tier 2. Metal Tier 2. Shadow Ed Tier 2. Augmented with Calamity's Will. Balance, 720,200 US. Equipment, tap to display. Skills. Snow Girl. Tier 2 Glacial Magic. Passive regeneration, blessed by ice, faded snow movement, glacial aura, glacial touch, glacial breath, ice field affinity, cold illusion Omicron Beta Yo. Snowmancer. Nanotech Engineering Tier 2, bow creation, shield creation, melee weapon creation, armor creation, hand cannon creation, shotgun creation. Frozen Hell series. Frozen Slumber, Azure Hellfire, Calamity Trident. Ancient Healing Arts. Fire of Life. Een Style Azura's Path. Phantom Path, Azura Sword Path. Sword Skills. Refraction, Soul Sword. Other. Minimap, Inspection, Disguise, Mana Barrier, Lightning Magic, Tier 2. Metal Magic, Tier 2. Shadow Magic, Tier 2. Combust. Shared Skills, Een. Shadow Buff, Tier 1. Ice Chain, Tier 1. Shadow Cloak, Tier 1. Shadow Talon, Tier 1. Rift Walker, Tier 1. Absorption/Redirection, Tier 1. Shadow Affinity, Tier 2. With her stats improving overall, Shiro was comparable to a low-grade level 51. And that was considering the fact that they got a bonus due to them being in C-Class. If I reach level 50, I should be able to hold my own against level 51-55s even if they're an entire class above me. My stats should make up for the difference. Shiro thought to herself with a smile. Plus, her set armor gave her life steal and mana leech, which allowed her to be self-sustaining. Not to mention the fact that she had skills that would buff MP and HP regen, along with Fire of Life that would heal her. When paired with her ridiculous attacking power, she is the most powerful level 47 in history. And that was including the fact that her links were still broken. Making her way to the obelisk, Shiro saw the mini-boss awaiting her arrival. The boss itself was a four-tailed wolf with snow-white fur, crystal blue eyes, and neon blue streaks across its body. Standing up at around 5 meters, the Wolf King sat with an air of royalty. Four-tailed Luna Wolf King LVL 50 Boss. HP 2 000 000 /2 000 000 MP 3 000 000/3 000 000. Normally, the Wolf King would summon all of his underlings, but Shiro had foiled this plan. With her ability to sense everything that came into contact with snow in her area, she was able to snuff all of the wolves. Naturally, this meant the king was alone. Might as well give this a try. Shiro grinned as lightning and metal sparked in her hand. Soon, a double-barreled shotgun could be seen in her grasp. Smooth black metal with red highlights along the panels. Loading 2 fire burst bullets, Shiro crouched down and dashed towards the boss. "Een, you might want to get a few shots in before I kill it," Shiro reminded. Asterisk chirp. Flapping her wings, Een became a blur and shot towards the boss. Even Shiro was surprised by the extent of her speed. Asterisk poochie poochie poochie. Deep lacerations could be seen on the Wolf King's body, especially near the mouth. Swiping his tails, a blizzard formed around him in an attempt to freeze Een. "Not on my watch." Shiro laughed as she snapped her fingers and dispelled the blizzard. Een Style Azura's Path, Phantom Path. Her body flickered under the boss and jammed her shotgun barrel in one of the lacerations. Asterisk bang. The force of the shot sent the Wolf King stumbling backwards. However, the recoil had also affected Shiro since she had almost let go of the shotgun. Fire could be seen erupting from his wound as his HP dropped rapidly. Reloading her weapon with normal bullets, Shiro gestured for Een to attack more often. With the support that Shiro provided, they were able to destroy most of the boss's health quickly since she had effectively shut down his entire arsenal of skills. What would have been a rather difficult boss for normal adventurers became a joke in front of Shiro and Een. Looking at the boss that laid in a puddle of its own blood, Her's eyes softened and crouched in front of him. "Does it hurt?" she asked, making eye contact. The Wolf King didn't say anything but close his eyes. From the fight it just had, he somewhat knew of her personality. She would not show compassion for a boss she had just beaten. Tisk, no fun. Shiro frowned before pointing her gun at his head and pulled the trigger. Asterisk bang. Blood and brain matter splattered everywhere as Shiro flexed her finger and froze everything around her. She liked her new dress quite a bit, and she wasn't about to let some blood dirty it. Stretching her body, Shiro yawned a little before tapping the obelisk to teleport her to the next floor. Meanwhile, Please let me come with you. The watcher asked with a bow. Why should I? Lyrica narrowed her eyes with suspicion. I wish to see the kind of heights my princess can reach. Due to certain circumstances, I cannot form a contract with her. Hence I sought you out to sign a contract. The watcher admitted. After he saw Shiro leave, he suddenly felt like he would regret this for the rest of his life if he didn't follow her. Hence why he decided to sign a contract with Lyrica instead. And why would I help you? Especially after the way you treated me. Lyrica frowned. Of course, that was only an excuse. Why should she let some old geezer follow Shiro around? Where's the FBI when you need them? And I'm sorry for that. This old man is willing to lay my life down for you, just so that I can follow Princess in the other world. The watcher bowed. And if I sign a contract with you, what benefits will it give me? You'll have my full support in unlocking the full potential of your new sword. And would you just be in spirit form? Lyrica asked. No. I'll have my own body, but I won't be able to use my powers. But that doesn't mean I'm useless. I can still use my powers, but only in times of need, since I'll need to return to spirit form and enter a deep slumber in order to recover from the backlash. So, you'll just become a butler? Lyrica asked with a raised eyebrow. Yes. The watcher replied after a short moment. What else can you do? She asked. I can teach you my sword arts. Fine. But how do I make sure that you can't go against my orders if we do sign a contract? Lyrica narrowed her eyes. The contract that we'll be signing is a life and death contract. If I die, you'll be fine. But if you die, I'll die also. Not only that, but you orders will have sway over me. As long as it's not overboard, I cannot disobey. Overboard in what way? Anything that goes against my own moral compass. So things like killing kids or *p and the such? The watcher replied. Sure. So what do I do? Lyrica asked. Give me a droplet of your blood, and I'll establish the contract. Nodding her head, Lyrica gave him a droplet of blood as he repeated the same thing he tried with Shiro. A golden glow encased his body as the illusionary image of shackles chained him up before fading away. His spiritual form started to change as he became a young man standing at 1.8 meters. He had black hair and black eyes and wore a white hanfu. While he was handsome, he had little to no effect on Lyrica. My life is now in your hands, lie dash. Call me young Mississippi. Lyrica grinned in a similar manner to Shiro. This was her own form of revenge since he had looked down on her before. Plus, the order wasn't overboard, so the watcher could only obey her. Understood, young Mississippi. He nodded with a bow. What's your name and tell me about yourself in terms of combat potential? Lyrica asked. My name is Yuan Tian, Divine Swordsman. Current level is 1, but I can exhibit power 20 levels above you in times of need. So right now, I can perform similar to a level 65. Yuan Tian replied with a respectful bow. All right, follow me. I'm leaving the trial now, Lyrica said since she didn't want to leave him behind. Don't worry, young miss. Even if you leave me in the corner of the world, I'll be forcefully teleported to you should you will it, or if you're in danger. Yuan Tian said, informing her about the matter. Handy. Lyrica replied with a shrug before leaving the trial. Hashtag. Asterisk bang. Firing her shotgun, Shiro killed the second mini-boss as only one more boss remained till she cleared the dungeon. From what she remembered, the final boss was a strength-type boss that has a high resistance to fire and ice. Unfortunately for it, even if it was resistant to both elements, her shotgun bullet does not belong to any element. In other words, wow, this dungeon can't do *T against me, Shiro muttered as she had slightly underestimated her effectiveness in an ice-type dungeon. While she did understand that she had a huge advantage against ice-type enemies, she didn't think that she could suppress them to this extent. Plus, they couldn't use anything other than ice, so they were helpless against her. Naturally, she wasn't complaining, but just doing target practice didn't get her blood boiling. No, it bored the living crap out of her. URG. You know what, Ian? Why don't you try fighting the boss alone? I'll help when he's using ice magic. Shiro offered since it was a good way for Ian to get more EXP from her contributions. Asterisk chirp. Ian didn't mind since she just wanted to reach level 50 quickly and class up. Great, then that's settled. You fight the boss along, and I'll only help if it's using ice magic. Shiro smiled and teleported them into the final boss room. However, once she entered the boss room, she tilted her head back, seeing the size of the boss. Asterisk whistle. Pretty huge. Shiro mused to herself. Standing at almost 10 meters, blue skin and white hair, the giant was clad in thick, plated armor. While the duo was talking, the giant didn't let them have a break since a two-fold magic circle had already covered the entire boss room. Looking at the magic circle, Shiro only scoffed slightly before flicking it with her finger. Asterisk ping. The giant was shocked seeing his magic being destroyed so easily. This princess doesn't even need to use my mana disruption bullets for you. Shiro taunted with a grin. While the giant didn't know what a mana disruption bullet was, it knew that the little girl was looking down on him. Asterisk Yura. He shouted out and punched towards her. In style Azura's path, phantom path. Flickering away from the punch, Shiro hit herself in the room. Asterisk boom. Asterisk ping ping. Yin's attacks only bounced off the armor as Shiro frowned. Seems like Yin's lacking a lot of attack power. However, it could be a situation where Yin would have low firepower early in the levels, but get exponentially stronger later on. Seeing her attacks ineffective, Yin narrowed her eyes in annoyance. Asterisk chirp. A two-fold magic circle started to enlarge as Shiro could tell Yin was pooling most of her mana into this spell. TSK, don't make yourself an easy target with this. Shiro clicked her tongue and aimed her palm at the boss. Clutching her hand into a fist, several ice chains erupted from the ground and wrapped around the boss as Yin charged up her magic. Asterisk Yura. The giant tried to struggle, but the chains refused to budge. As the boss was trying to struggle out of the chains, Yin had finished her spell. Asterisk chirp. Black mist started to encroach into the room and slowly crawled towards the boss. Slipping into his armor, the mist started to eat away at the boss's flesh. Oh damn, Shiro muttered as she didn't expect Yin to pull such a powerful spell. The spell had similar properties to the corrosive nature of her augmented shadow attunement. While her augment is more closely linked to decay and withering, Yin's was more ravenous. It was as if it was a beast that had been starved for centuries. Centuries? What kind of beast are you? Shiro muttered with curiosity. Killing the boss with relative ease, Shiro and Yin left the dungeon with a freshly stocked-up pile of mana stones. Of course, she didn't just leave without any preparations. Using her phantom path, Shiro made sure that no one could see her exit the dungeon. Checking her phone, Shiro was bombarded by news of New York being finally cleared of monsters spawned by the totem. Finally, Shiro muttered with a smile. With the clearance of monsters in New York, that meant she could get the rebirth pill from Nantion, along with the fact that she can take Lyrica and Madison to Winter's Grace. Maybe I should ask to see if Sylvia wants to join them as well? Shiro mused to herself before bringing up Sylvia's contact on her phone. Shiro, have you heard the news? New York's been cleared. Sylvia, I've just seen it now. What about it? Shiro, since the factions are now free, me, Lyrica, and Madison are heading to the Winter's Grace branch office. Depending on what happens, I can get you a spot as well if you want to join. Sylvia, sure. Since I'm in your party, I might as well follow. Though don't worry about it if I can't join. The faction doesn't restrict parties, right? Shiro, no they don't. Plus, I'm a guest elder, so I should have some say in this. Sylvia, honestly, I'm not even surprised that you're a guest elder. Plus, with your capabilities, making you a normal member would be idiotic, haha. Shiro, true. So that's settled. I still have some things left to do in this city, but it shouldn't take too long. See you tomorrow. Sylvia, see you later. Putting her phone away, Shiro made a mental list of all the things she needed to do. Contact Freya from Winter's Grace and see what we're doing for the faction. Get the outfits, meet up with Nantion, and get the pill. Seems easy enough. She chuckled. Arriving back at the tent, Shiro frowned when she could see an extra presence in the tent. Flexing her fingers, She made several ice needles since she could tell the presence is one that was much more powerful than Lyrica and Madison. Walking cautiously to the tent, Shiro opened it slightly and was welcomed by the sight of a young man in a hanfu drinking tea. Lyrica, Madison, and Kane looked over in curiosity but was shocked seeing Shiro's new look. Hair tied into a ponytail and the new black dress gave her a slight gothic Lolita feeling. It was the kind of feeling that almost made Lyrica want to be a kind of criminal cough. Shirone, Kane cried out in joy and was about to jog over when Yuan Tian overtook her. Princess. However, before he could even get close, he could see two ice needles pointed at his eyes and several wires wrapped around his body. When did they appear? He thought in shock. Who are you? Shiro frowned and looked past him. Seeing Lyrica, Madison, and Kane still safe and sound, she sighed in relief but didn't let her guard down. It's me, the Watcher. I've signed a contract with young Miss so that I can follow you. He smiled and bowed slightly. He's a butler. Lyrica called out from the background. Amen. Nodding her head in acknowledgement, Shiro thawed the ice and retrieved her wires. So you're our butler now? Shiro raised an eyebrow and examined the Watcher. You look revitalized. She commented. Indeed. After signing a contract with the young Miss, I gained a physical body and in turn, allowed this old man to return to my prime. He replied with a small laugh. Don't call yourself old man. Just address yourself as butler. Lyrica called out from the background. Yuan Tian made a face of discomfort before sighing. This butler understands. Shiro perked up seeing someone like Yuan Tian being so submissive. Lyrica, can you tell me about what happened? Shiro asked. Of course. So basically, ####. After understanding the situation, Shiro made a face of confusion. For someone like Yuan Tian, signing a slave/life and death contract was going against their way of life. The only reason he wanted to sign a contract with her was due to the fact that she was apparently the best talent he had ever seen. But for him to sign a contract with Lyrica confused Shiro since she understood that there are most likely people more talented than Lyrica. It's because I want to follow the princess. My intuition told me that I would regret not following you. And in life, this butler had always trusted my intuition. Plus, young Miss is a dear friend of Princess. As long as I can follow Princess, this butler does not mind. Yuan Tian replied. Oh, in that case, then I wish you can train Lyrica well. Due to my nature and power, I'm not giving her the chance to earn enough experience. Even when I don't help, I am still a safety net that will guarantee her safety. Since you're a seasoned veteran, you should know that this isn't good, right? Shiro smiled. Of course, Princess. However, I cannot say that I will train her better since your combat experience seemed to be vastly superior to this butler. Yuan Tian replied as there was a knowing look in his eyes. During the short moment when Shiro had readied all the wires and the ice needles, he could barely react before his senses warned him of the dangers surrounding him. It was as if he was a fly that had suddenly been ensnared by a spider's web. Haha, perhaps. Shiro dismissed it with a laugh. By the way, you too. New York has been cleared, so we'll be making our way to Winter's Grace sooner or later. We'll also go to Aram's tomorrow to pick up your new outfits. Shiro said, showing them the news on the phone. Hey, I wonder what's the faction going to be like? Madison muttered whilst leaning back. Does that mean Shirone is going to leave me? Kane frowned in sadness. Unfortunately, yes. But if you train hard and keep yourself safe, I'm sure we'll meet in the future. Shiro smiled dotingly. She wanted to take Kane, but that meant separating her from her mother. And she knew that not growing up with parents could possibly result in some bad traumas for kids, especially in a competitive environment like the factions. But how will I find Shirone? The world is so big. Kane asked. Ha, it's easy. Do you think that your Shirone will be average in the future? Just search up her name, and you'll find her in the future. Madison laughed. Shiro only smiled since it was indeed a possibility. Plus, she was the guest elder at a faction now, so there were bound to be some news. Kane only frowned since she knew that it was going to be hard even if she tried to track her down. Don't worry about it. Once you get strong enough, I'm sure it would be an easy task for you to find me. Shiro said since she understood Kane's worries. Fine. I should give her a gift before I leave. Something practical. Shiro thought. One of the better options would be to give her a growth-type weapon that can level up besides her. However, she knew the kind of dangers it could bring. But at the same time, a growth-type weapon will help her massively, especially since she had a pair of katanas in her inventory that she had gotten from the mutated dungeon. We'll see, she thought, setting the problem aside for now. After talking to the group for a little longer, Shiro decided to leave the tent since she could tell that Yuan Tian wanted to say something. Waiting on the tree branch, Shiro smiled lightly when Yuan Tian left the tent as well. So what did you want to talk to me about? Shiro asked. I was just curious of Princess's full power. Since Princess has told me that you're not a warrior and instead a mage, I wish to see just how powerful Princess was. Yuan Tian said as he kneeled down onto one knee. Oh, I don't see why not. However, our location is a little too open and would draw many eyes. Come with me. Shiro replied and hopped off the branch lightly. Walking towards the ruins of the slums, Shiro found a spot where no one would interfere. Plus, it was also far enough from the city that it would allow her to run before any guards arrive. So you wish to see me at my most powerful? Yes. I can only go as powerful as I can afford, is that okay? Shiro asked since she wasn't about to reveal all of her power. That is fine. I just wish to peer into Princess's strength as a mage. Yuan Tian nodded. Then prepare yourself. Shiro said as emotion started to fade from her face. Stomping down, glacial ice spread out instantly as a chilling, killing intent enveloped Yuan Tian. His body instantly tensed up, but noticed that wires were already surrounding him. Not only that, neon blue flames floated around him. Each ball of flame felt like they could freeze him just by being near him. And to top everything off, a void black trident could be seen just above her head. Enveloped by a deep purple aura that seems to consume everything around it, the trident was by far the most dangerous attack at this moment. A single move to turn the area into her domain and shut me down from doing anything, followed up by a trident that will most definitely kill me in a single blow. Princess isn't even a monster. She's far worse. Yuan Tian thought to himself. And this was done in an instant as well. A single moment was all that she needed to turn the entire area into a place that suited her the best. She wasn't even doing any preparations for large-scale spells as well. Happy? Shiro chuckled, seeing the absolute shock and reverence in Yuan Tian's eyes. This butler is content. I am eager to see what you can do once you class up my princess, he replied, lowering his head as if he wasn't even worthy to gaze upon her. Amen. Just focus on training my friend. Once we arrive at the faction, I don't think I'll be able to go with them as often. Shiro shook her head and retracted everything. The faction was a perfect opportunity for Madison and Lyrica to cultivate their experiences out in the field. While it was indeed true that they can solo dungeons or fight strong bosses, they needed to work with someone weaker than them. By doing so, they'll be forced to learn situational awareness and make sure they kept tabs on everyone in the party. Once they learn that, they'll be able to perform much better in a team rather than her supporting them all the way with her magic. Plus, Shiro knew that her case was a little special since there shouldn't be anyone that can support them like this at their level. Her presence would only cause them to fall into laziness. I understand, Princess. Also, we should get you some clothes befitting of a butler. We can't have you wearing a hanfu all the time now, can we? Shiro chuckled slightly. Butler clothes? Yuan Tian furrowed his brows in confusion. Oh, you'll love them. Shiro grinned. The next day, you lied to me. Yuan Tian cried out in betrayal. The suit felt uncomfortable for him since he was restricted. Unlike his hanfu that allowed him to have a full range of motion, the suit was basically a prison. Plus, Lyrica had ordered him not to damage it, so he could only suffer the pain of being squeezed into a tight suit. However, the girls had to admit that Yuan Tian looked rather handsome in the suit. Buying several spare suits for Yuan Tian, the girls talked while waiting for Sylvia to arrive. They had arranged the meeting to be in the city center where they sold clothes. After a short moment, they could see Sylvia walking up in the distance. What the hell? was her first reaction upon hearing that the Watcher was turned into Lyrica's butler. Don't mind the small details. Shiro replied. I don't think that can be called small, but whatever. Sylvia sighed since she had mentally prepared herself for most things that might happen during her time in the party. The fact that they made a trial mini-boss into a butler was justification of her preparation. Once they arrived at the workshop, Aram showed them their outfits. Here's Lyrica's, Madison's, and Sylvia's. Also, you're not going to tell me to make one for this guy, are you? Aram asked. No, don't worry about him. He's a butler of sorts, so he doesn't need to fight. Shiro chuckled seeing Aram's reaction. Phew, because I'm seriously going to run out of monster cloth at the rate you're going. Aram rolled her eyes. Shiro's party was the only party that had managed to make her give out 2 sets of clothes. And even then, it was a surprise if she even gave people 1 set since they're not up for sale. Only those who had her favor would receive one. Looking at their new outfits, the trio smiled in satisfaction. Lyrica had a sleeveless red and white dress that paired with long gloves and stockings. The dress itself was suited for combat since it didn't limit her body movement at all. Madison's outfit was similar in design, but with small alterations. Instead of sleeveless dress and gloves, hers was just a long-sleeve dress that was colored a mix of red, dark gray, and orange. As for Sylvia, her outfit was more reserved since it didn't show any skin. Colored white and green, her outfit gave a calming feeling as healers should do. Now that the trio has gotten their outfits, Shiro could strike that off her checklist. Only a few more things to do now. She thought to herself, while we're still in Kairosa, I want you girls to level up as much as you can. Go challenge level 50 dungeons just by yourselves, and when you can beat them solo, challenge level 55s as a team. Shiro said while sitting down on a chair. They were currently at a cafe near Aram's workshop and were just discussing what they were going to do. What about you? Lyrica asked. Hee, obviously I'll be shooting for level 50. Shiro grinned. If she became level 50 before meeting Nantion, she'll be able to use the pill straight away. Well, I know that, but what are you going to do in order to reach that level quickly? Lyrica replied. What else would I do? If I can solo level 50 and 55 dungeons, the next option would obviously be level 60 dungeons. Shiro chuckled. Plus, I'm quite interested to see what the raids are like in this city. She added on. Due to the geography of the city, the raids in Kairosa feature naval combat. While she wasn't a stranger to naval combat, she was quite curious about how people in this world fought on water. How I know that the raids in Kairosa are much more dangerous than the raids back in New York. Back then, we only did a low-level dungeon where everyone was confident in what they were doing. However, with the limited movement on a boat, the danger factor of the raid jumps up exponentially. Sylvia reminded them. Don't worry about that. As long as it's not underwater, my ice will be able to handle it. Shiro replied with a smile. If they fought on top of water, Shiro would be able to create platforms on the water using her ice. True. Sylvia nodded her head since ice magic worked wonders in a situation like this. Great, but before that, there's a party being hosted by the New Yorkers. Wanna go? Lyrica asked, showing them a picture of a poster that she had taken. Sure, why not? Madison and Sylvia were down for the party. As for Shiro, she wasn't too sure since there was no point in her going to begin with. She couldn't taste the food, and there were no benefits in joining. I dunno. I feel like going to a dungeon would be a better use of my time. No? Shiro shrugged her shoulders. Don't be such a workaholic and come with us. Madison chuckled and wrapped her hand around Shiro's shoulders. Hi, sure, I guess. Shiro smiled wearily. Making their way back to the camping sites, they could see people setting up for a large party. Lights were being hung up as food was being prepared in large quantities. Naturally, there were also drinks and stalls being set up. Overall, it was something akin to a huge festival. Sitting on the biggest tree in the center, Shiro watched as everyone did something to help. Of course, she was using her phantom path to make sure that no one could see her. She wasn't avoiding the work at all. Cough. Throwing another mana stone lollipop in her mouth, Shiro kept an eye on everyone. Lyrica and Madison were helping with setting up game stalls for the kids while Sylvia was assisting with setting up a first aid area. After all, in parties like this, there were bound to be people who got injured. As for Kane, She was enjoying her time with some kids. She would occasionally look around to try find Shiro but frowned when she wasn't there. I should probably make her a manual to practicing style martial arts. I'll show her second and third phantom. They're relatively easy when compared to first and fourth phantom. Shiro mused to herself. Second and third phantom only needed one to have a great deal of flexibility along with body control. With someone like Kane who was following her training guide, she should be able to match these requirements. However, unlike the second and third phantom, the first and fourth needed more from the user. If used incorrectly, they would put the user in more dangers. This was also one of the reasons that she didn't want to teach Lyrica and Madison before. Their bodies simply wasn't suited. But now that they've leveled up, their stats would compensate slightly for their lack of compatibility. While it wouldn't be a perfect recreation of the style, it would at least give them some small benefits rather than expose them to danger. Pulling out a notepad and pen, Shiro tapped the pen on her chin for a short moment before she started to draw on the pad. The speed of which she was drawing out the picture was incredible, since it looked like she didn't even need to think whilst drawing. It was an intricate step-by-step guide of everything that Fei Ling had taught her when she showed her the Een-style phantom arts. How one should position their body with arrows to help show the position. A detailed drawing of a person that is in the pose and ways that one could train it. Since she was able to memorize everything within a day, Shiro didn't need to do all of the live training, so Fei Ling hardly explained that section to her. They should be able to learn it with just the basics here. Shiro thought to herself, since this was the best that she could offer them. Until they were able to control their body like her, she wasn't going to show them anymore since there is only so much high stats could compensate for. Asterisk Pa. Closing the notebook, Shiro wrote down the title of the martial arts. Een-style phantom arts, second plus third phantom. Nodding her head in satisfaction, Shiro flexed her fingers and made a printer. Placing her book inside one of the compartments, Shiro printed out 2 copies before disassembling it again. Hopping off the tree, Shiro sneaked up behind Kane and tapped her on the head. Ah! Crying out in shock, Kane quickly turned around and saw Shiro. When the other kids saw her, they widened their eyes in shock seeing someone as pretty as Shiro. Shiro-ne. Kane hugged Shiro and climbed onto her back. Having fun? Shiro smiled. Yeah. Kane nodded. I got a little present for you. You can't let other people see it no matter what, okay? Only you can read this. Don't tell other people as well. Shiro warned and handed her the book. However, she didn't need to worry about other people opening the book since she made it so that if anyone other than Kane forces the book open, it would start shredding itself. As for how that worked, it was a combination of eye scanners and fingerprint scanners. Kane's eyes glistened in joy seeing Shiro hand her a present. Thank you. Kane laughed and hugged Shiro's head. Shiro only smiled before letting her down. My name is Gil. A young boy said nervously walking up to Shiro. Hi Gil, my name is Shiro. Shiro replied with a soft chuckle. Gil blushed harder seeing Shiro laugh and shyly reached out his hand. Can I shake your hand? He asked. Sure, I don't see why not. Shiro nodded her head. However, before she could shake hands, Kane stepped between them and hugged Shiro's hand. Know me first. She pouted and proceeded to shake her hand. Smiling softly, Shiro patted Kane's head and shook hands with Gil. Play nice, Kane. I'm going to go look for Lyrica and Madison. See ya. See you later, Shiro-ne. Kane nodded and waved her hand. Watching Shiro flicker away like a ghost, Gil looked down on his hand and grinned. Meanwhile, Shiro found Lyrica and Madison resting by the side. Yo! Shiro grinned and appeared behind them. The duo reacted instinctively, pulling out their weapons and slashed towards her immediately. Pinching the swords with ease, Shiro flicked them back to the duo. Aya, what if that was some bystander? Shiro said with a grin. Bystanders don't feel like a boss. Lyrica rolled her eyes since the moment Shiro appeared behind them, their instincts were warning them of a strong presence. Shiro only shrugged in response before pulling out 2 books. Remember how I said that I'll teach you girls my martial arts? Well, in this book, there's the second phantom and the third phantom. You two can learn them both, but remember, if any part of your body starts to hurt excessively, stop and tell me. Shiro warned. Naturally, only you girls can read this and don't tell other people about it. Don't show them either. She continued. Got it. The duo nodded. Shiro's martial art was definitely powerful, and they knew that if word got out that they had the training manual, people would definitely be looking for them. Oh yes, Shiro. Where were you earlier? Why don't you help us, Essie? Where did she go? Lyrica asked as she realized that Shiro was gone in a blink. Literally. Seems like Shiro doesn't like helping out with preparation. Madison chuckled lightly before sitting back down. Huh. ####. The festival was in full swing once it hit 8 p.m. Songs were being blasted through speakers, and people were socializing while having a banquet. Naturally, there were areas for people to dance, play games, compete in beauty contests, and the such. There were prizes, but most people were there just for fun. Their spirit was at an all-time high. Lyrica and Madison were having some fun doing the shooting games since it tested their reaction speed and accuracy. Sylvia just tagged along for fun since she just enjoyed the atmosphere. Hey Sylvie, why don't we try the strength test? Lyrica asked, pointing at the punching bag with a point meter beside it. I'll just watch. You girls can have fun. Sylvia smiled lightly. Come on, have some fun with us. Madison insisted. Fine if you say so, Sylvia said after a short pause. Standing in front of the punching bag, Lyrica pulled her fist back and punched forwards with all her strength. 64 out of 100 points. Not bad, I suppose. Lyrica shrugged. Hee, my turn, Madison said with a grin. Standing in the same place Lyrica did, Madison opted for a crushing uppercut instead. 81 out of 100 points. Yes. Madison clenched her fist in joy. Now then, Sylvie, your turn. Lyrica urged Sylvia with a smile. Smiling wearily, Sylvia stood in front of the punching bag. I'll need some buffs since I'm not a fighter, okay? Sylvia asked, glancing backwards. Go for it. Lyrica nodded her head. Taking a deep breath, Sylvia started to stack one buff after another onto her body. Hora! She shouted out as her fist slammed into the bag. An air current blew past Lyrica and Madison, causing them to pause in shock. 89 out of 100 points. How many buffs did you use? Lyrica asked with widened eyes. While neither her or Madison used buffs to get their strength up, the fact that Sylvia could punch harder than them was still incredible. Haha, not too much. Only around 7. Sylvia replied, feeling a little embarrassed. The duo didn't know what to say, but Yuan Tian stepped forward. You also want to try? Lyrica asked. I do wish to test a little theory of mine. Yuan Tian nodded. Go ahead. Placing his palm against the bag, Yuan Tian narrowed his eyes before concentrating his strength into his palm. Bang. 100 out of 100 points. Ho, seems like there is indeed a little trick to it. Yuan Tian smiled slightly. How did you do that? Lyrica asked in amazement. Armor piercing is what I believe you would call it. Yuan Tian smiled. After a certain level, all adventurers should have one or more ways to pierce armor. What he did was simply use the shortest path to transfer all the power into the device that sensed the shock. Not only that, he had also used less strength than Lyrica. Don't worry, young miss, I will naturally teach you that. Yuan Tian chuckled, seeing the eagerness on her face. Let's go meet up with Shiro now. Didn't she and Kene go near the place where all the bars are? Madison asked. Yeah, they did, let's go. Making their way over, they presumed that Shiro would enjoy some games with Kane, but instead, she was competing in a drinking contest against quite a few people. Is that all you got, boy? Shiro grinned and chugged an entire jug of alcohol. Meanwhile, the boy was actually a 6'5" hulking mass of muscle that was sprawled out on the floor. And that's another resounding victory for Shiro. The commentator shouted out in a mixture of excitement and dumbfoundedness. *woo. The crowd cheered as they couldn't believe a little girl was beating all of their best drinkers back to back. One would normally stop a child like her from drinking, but she had provided them with her adventurer's ID that showed her age being 19. Hey, how much has she drunk now? Lyrica asked. I think that's the 24th jug, someone replied in disbelief. How is she not bloated yet? Lyrica shouted out in her mind. Sitting on the table and crossing her legs, Shiro grinned and looked down at all her victims. Anyone else? She raised an eyebrow. The reason as to why she even competed in this was because the reward was a giant toy bear that Kane had wanted. Normally, a woman would get her boyfriend to earn that bear, but for her, it was Kane getting her big sis to win the bear. Seeing every competitor passed out, the commentator had to rub his eyes to make sure that he wasn't dreaming. The winner is Shiro, he called out, and had someone bring the giant toy bear over. Letting Kane hold the bear in her arms, Shiro grabbed one more jug and downed it before walking away. Looking at Shiro and Kane, who was currently holding a bear bigger than her body, the crowd only shook their heads in disbelief. They had learnt that on top of her fearsome habit of targeting the ass, she also had a monstrous alcohol tolerance. In the next morning, while everyone was tidying up the festival, Shiro was currently farming away at a level 60 dungeon together with Ian. She was currently running away from a group of 15 monsters that all looked identical. They were shrouded by a black cloth and had a pair of glowing red eyes. Two dangerous scythe-like claws peeked out from under the cloth and tried to cut Shiro up the moment they were close enough. Stomping her foot down, Shiro jumped upwards while simultaneously freezing everything around her. Frozen hell, frozen slumber. Chains erupted out from the ground and held the monsters in place, while Shiro stood on one of her swords to keep herself afloat. While she did have the option of using her float skill, it was just unnecessary use of mana since her swords were already floating. Clicking both her fingers, a three-fold magic circle erupted underneath the monsters. Grinning coldly, Shiro flicked her finger upwards as a giant ice dragon clawed out of the magic circle and swallowed the monsters. However, they weren't dead yet since the level disparity meant her skills weren't doing as much damage as they should, even if it was a newly developed Tier 3 destruction magic. Crouching down on her sword, Shiro put force into her legs and shot towards the ice dragon that had yet to be thawed. Reorientation herself in mid-air, Shiro aimed her palm at the dragon and melted all of the ice, leaving the 15 monsters floating in the air. Asterisk bang. Kicking the monster that was closest to her, Shiro sent him colliding against the other monsters and bundled them up together. Twisting her body, she flexed her fingers and created a shotgun. Fire burst bullet. Asterisk bang. The recoil caused her to flip backwards, but she landed easily and quickly looked up to check the damage. While she did manage to kill the first monster, the damage was dampened exponentially since he tanked most of the pellets. In-style Azura's path, phantom path. Flicking her gun upwards, Shiro twisted her body and kicked the gun towards the group of monsters. Asterisk Kacha. The gun shifted itself into a sword and cut apart any monster that was too slow in dodging. Che missed 4. Shiro clicked her tongue. Ian. She shouted out since this was a perfect chance for Ian to get some EXP. Unfortunately, before Ian could hit them, a blue barrier erected around the 4 and connected them to each other. Shiro frowned since they were just a little late. Asterisk KSH, KSH, KSH. Magic circles started to appear everywhere around them, but Shiro didn't get anxious. While it was indeed true that a single one of these spells were highly dangerous, she had her own counter as well. Flicking her wrists, 2 hand cannons appeared in her hands as she loaded them with neon blue bullets. Naturally, these bullets were the mana disruption bullets she had used against her shadow. A single shot of this bullet would render a magic circle useless as long as she got to it quick enough. Asterisk bang 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 bang. Shooting her guns non-stop, Shiro was able to cancel out all of the magic circles as the barrier around the monsters weakened. Asterisk chirp. Seeing a chance appear, Ian flashed towards the monsters and flexed her wings. Her feathers glowed with a purple light as she spun her body and sent them slashing towards them. The first set of energy blades left glowing spots of light that confused the monsters since they didn't do any damage. However, the moment the second set of blades hit their body at the glowing red spots, they widened their eyes in shock and pain since they could feel their bodies being sliced apart. An amplifying skill? Shiro thought with interest. An amplifying skill is where it would buff the damage any subsequent skill did. A great skill in raid fights since it allows the rest of the team to increase their damage. Seems like Yin's getting more skills as she gets closer to level 50. Shiro smiled. Since Yin was able to get the last hits in, she managed to get a pretty substantial amount of EXP, which increased her level from 44 to 45. Ohaya? A new skill? Shiro muttered in excitement since she still remembers how amazing the Rift Walker skill was. Dark Seraphim, Finisher. When used, an area of dark mist would surround the user and hide them from sight. While inside the mist, you will gain increased attack speed but decreased defense significantly. When damage taken inside the mist exceeds a certain amount, you will be ejected straight away. Plus 60% attack. Plus 35% attack speed. Minus 95% defense. Duration, 5 seconds. Attack limit, 2, Tier 2. Miss size, dependent on the amount of mana used. Cooldown, 5 minutes. Requirements. Can only be used when target is below 10% health. Hoa Finisher Ha. Not bad at all. Shiro nodded her head seeing the skill. A skill like this helps killing strong enemies such as mini-bosses, but the fact that it has a minus 95% defense wasn't desirable. However, for people who were already glass cannons, it didn't pose a problem. While she was checking her new skills, Shiro decided to look at her newly made skill. Frozen Hell. Ice Drake's Feast summons a replica of an ice drake that will feast on those inside the designated area. Damage increases depending on how many enemies are inside the area. Cost, 50,000 mana. Duration, not applicable. Cooldown, 3 minutes. While she was checking her skills, Yin had already harvested all the C-ranked mana stones and looked at them with the desire to just eat them all. You can have one since you did a good job. Shiro decided to reward Yin since she did a good job at timing her attacks. Asterisk chirp. Crying out in joy, Yin scoffed one of the mana stones down and experienced another level up, thus increasing her level from 45 to 46. Heis, I wish I could have the same resilience as you. If I ate that, this princess would probably blow up. Shiro smiled with slight jealousy. Being able to level up from a single meal seemed like a dream for her, since she doesn't have the resilience to be able to withstand the effects. However, at the same time, it was very wasteful since Yin wasn't able to absorb everything. Asterisk chirp. Yin only lazily replied as she laid herself on Shiro's shoulder. Smiling wearily, Shiro continued to grind for some levels. ####. In the end, Yin took most the EXP. Shiro said as she rested her head on the desk. While they were grinding, Yin was sneaking her final hits in and taking most of the EXP. Shiro did tell Yin to stop, however. She just grinned and continued. Ah, that's quite unfortunate, Lyrica said as she glanced at Yin, who was pecking on a mana stone happily. If it wasn't for the fact that we're heading back now, I wouldn't have ended the grind so quickly. Shiro stretched and looked around her. Everyone was packing away and getting ready to head onto the train. Well, we can't just keep staying in the slum area now, could we? Plus, they need to rebuild, Madison said whilst eating a cupcake that they had distributed. True, it's kind of a shame that I didn't get to try the raid out though. Shiro shrugged. You can always come back, can't you? Also true, but why would I want to come back and do a raid I would have already out-leveled? Shiro shrugged since it would just be a walk in the park at that point. Plus, they were going to their faction anyways. After chatting for a little longer, the train arrived. Since there would be less chances of them meeting each other anytime soon, Kane made sure that she spent more time with Shiro on the train. While this was happening, Shiro took the chance to give Kane the katana. She had edited it during her free time, and now it was a level 5 growth weapon that could reach a max of level 50. The stats were heavily reduced, but the effects stayed the same. Plus, she was able to add on some abilities from her stock of skills she received from recycling weapons. Crimson Devourers, LVL 5/50ths, purple, 2 halves, plus 10 sharpness, plus 10 attack, plus 5 attack speed, plus 5 ignore defense, plus 5 critical chance, plus 5 critical damage, plus 5 lifesteal, plus 5 mana leech. Skills, passive, power up, momentum shift, serrated edge. Skills, active, flash strike, heated edge, counterguard, lightning pierce, blood devour. Set effect, 2 halves, increased sharpness, attack speed, lifesteal, and mana leech. A weapon like this was going to help Kane all the way to level 50. And of course, Shiro didn't forget about safety measures that made sure no one else could access her weapon. Since I've hidden the auto-disguise skill chip in the weapon, Kane will find out the skills one by one. Shiro thought to herself, since what Kane sees right now is only a green variant of the weapon with one passive skill. As she levels it up, the other passive skills and active skills would slowly appear. Naturally, when Kane received the weapon, her eyes gleamed with joy and vowed to treasure it in her heart. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Arriving in New York once again, Shiro wasn't too shocked at the damage, but everyone else couldn't help but drop their jaw in disbelief. There was not a single intact building left in New York, which made it look like a post-apocalyptic city. Craters were spread out all over the city, as some were bigger than others. A single giant crater many times the size of the others could be seen all the way from where they were, as Shiro could only guess that it was where the boss had died. It's been a while since I last saw something like this. Shiro mused to herself, since a fight between high levels generated roughly the same amount of damage. However, if it was a battle between 2 peak tier 4s or higher, they should forget the notion of having a city anymore. I don't even know where to start with this. Lyrica sighed. Why don't we get our stuff first? If you have anything left over from before evacuating, you should get that first. In the meantime, I'll go contact Winter's Grace. Shiro said. I still have some things left over at my old place, so I'll head back for now. I'll text you girls when I've got everything. Sylvia smiled. Seeing Sylvia off, they made sure to say goodbye to Kane and her mom before they also made their way back to their old dorm. So this is where the young miss and princess lived before, he commented whilst looking around the city. It is and isn't at the same time. Same place, but obviously, as you can see, it's destroyed. Lyrica replied with a shrug. Such a shame though. There were quite a few decent snack places near our dorm. Madison added on. While they were talking about the things that were near their dorm, Shiro was keeping an eye out just in case. Once they reached the school, they could see some students returning. Wasn't he the one that pulled out the foldable bed? Lyrica asked, pointing at a student. Now that you mention it, he is indeed the one that had the bed. Shiro replied after matching his face with her memories. As more students came back, more and more realized who they were. Isn't that Shiro? How is she level 47? And look, Lyrica and Madison are also high level. Similar whispers could be heard as they were shocked at their improvement. While they did manage to increase their levels, most of them only hovered around level 20 to 30. Only a selected few were able to get 30 plus. Seems like Yuthi had quite the reputation, especially considering the fact that one had even brought a bed for you, princess. Yuan Tian chuckled slightly. Just some teens being teens. Shiro shrugged. Aren't you a teen yourself? Speaking of which, we don't know your birthday, do we? That means we don't know when you become 14. Madison replied. Don't worry about the date. We spend our time in the dungeons, so the physical age is bound to be messed with. Just make it January the 1st or something. Shiro waved her hand dismissively. Well, I suppose January the 1st does make it easier to remember. They chatted for a little longer before arriving at the ruins that was once their old dorm. Welp, time to dig out our stuff, girls. Shiro chuckled. Thankfully for her, she didn't have much, so she was able to store it all in her inventory. But the same couldn't be said for Lyrica and Madison. My dorm's a little further away, so I'll see you girls later, Madison said, making her way to her dorm. Yuan Tian, why don't you help me get my stuff? Lyrica asked. As you wish, young miss. Since I don't have anything, I'll go look around for a bit. See you later. Shiro smiled before her body flickered away. She felt a lingering gaze on her and instantly knew who it was. Landing on the school roof, Shiro looked at the man sitting in front of her. Nice of you to join me. Seems like you've become more beautiful since the last time I saw you. A nice hairstyle with a good outfit to match. Nan Tian chuckled slightly. Shiro only rolled her eyes before pulling out her phone. She wasn't going to let him know about her voice just yet. Have you got the Phoenix pill? Shiro asked. Of course. I managed to get the 2% rebirth one for you. If you wanted pills that are higher in quality, you'll need to level up more or else I'm not sure if you can withstand it. And speaking of level, you're already level 47. Congratulations. Nantian complimented and pulled out a flaming red pill that seemed to give off a red glow. Taking the pill, Shiro inspected it just in case. Weakened Phoenix Rebirth Pill, Red. A pill that will refresh your body state by 2% due to its effects being weakened. Thank you. Shiro smiled and put away the pill. She wasn't going to eat it just yet since she was going to eat it later. You're welcome. You are joining my branch as a mystery member, so it's only natural that I help you. Nantian waved it off. I don't like being in debt, so if there's a task that I can do, tell me now. Shiro asked. Even though he said that all she needed to do was to join his branch as a mystery member, it didn't feel equivalent in Shiro's opinion. Hence, she wanted to do a few tasks to clear off this debt. I don't have a task for now. The factions are still recovering from clearing the city, and the sect hadn't issued any emergency tasks either. We're both free for a while. We're. I got a little break from the sect, and you'll be enjoying a small break before becoming the guest elder at Winter's Grace, right? That means we're both free. I suppose. Are you going anywhere during your break? Shiro asked since she got nothing to do right now. She might as well try to dig up some information on Nantian, considering the fact that he was the branch leader. Ohaya? Little Snow's curious about me, huh? Nantian smiled widely under his mask. Shiro only rolled her eyes but didn't reply since she was indeed curious. As a high-level adventurer, he shouldn't be hanging out in a low-level city. The demand for high-level adventurers are high since they're needed everywhere. If a high-level monster reaches a city with no adventurer to stop them, they should just give up on the city and mark it off as destroyed. Let's see. I think I'll tag along with you. Right now, you are my main source of entertainment after all. Nantian smiled. In that case, then you might want to help me keep a certain other stalker away then. I already have my hands full with you. Shiro rolled her eyes since it wasn't like she could affect his choice. Of course. Nantian nodded. He couldn't let people find out that she's a monster so soon now, could he? So what have you been up to during the time in Kairosa? He asked, gesturing for her to sit now near him. However, Shiro only flexed her fingers and created an ice throne before sitting down. I've just been helping Lyrica and Madison level up. We've also recruited a healer into our party now, and I'm going to see if I can pull her into Winter's Grace as well. Is that so? With your party of 4, I'm pretty sure you can clear all the dungeons easily. Plus, it seems like your friend had managed to obtain a pretty reliable butler. Nantian smiled and looked towards Yuan-Tian. Feeling Nantian's gaze on him, Yuan-Tian frowned before trying to look for the source. However, he wasn't able to pinpoint the person. Is there anything wrong? Lyrica asked, seeing Yuan-Tian asked weird. Nothing, young miss. Yuan-Tian shook his head and continued to help Lyrica search for some items. His name is Yuan-Tian, a butler, and a divine swordsman. Nantian added on since he was able to see through his class. Did you get anything good in your time in Kairosa? Any weapons or armor? You don't need to know that much. Shiro smiled as she relaxed herself on the ice throne. Fair enough. I'll probably find out later. Nantian shrugged. Now that you've asked a few questions, shouldn't it be my turn? I'll give you 3 questions then. Nantian smiled and held up 3 fingers. What level are you? Above 100 easily. Nantian replied vaguely. At least answer in detail. Shiro rolled her eyes. Where's the fun in that? It would be more entertaining to find things out for yourself after all. Fine. What's your class? I have a hybrid class. Hybrid class. That means he is something similar to a magic swordsman that is a jack of all trades. But since he is easily over level 100, I guess his class is a hybrid of at least 3 classes. What's your main weapon of choice? Magic. And that's 3 questions. I suppose I'll have to end our meeting short for today. Nantian chuckled before standing up. One more thing before you leave. Shiro typed out before thawing her throne. Go on. You really should change your stalking habits. Shiro grinned before her body flickered into the rift. Nantian stood in a daze hearing Shiro speak. The softness of her voice rang in his mind as he looked at the spot where she last stood. Standing still for a little while, he shook his head before leaving the area. Meanwhile, Shiro laughed to herself seeing Nantion freeze in shock. After being surprised by him time after time, Shiro wanted the roles to be reversed. Stretching her body slightly, Shiro pulled out her phone and sent a message to Freya. Shiro, hello Miss Freya, this is Shiro. I just wanted to contact you to see the current schedule on when we should meet up and go to the branch office. Closing her phone, Shiro understood that she probably wouldn't get a response anytime soon since Freya may be busy. Well, I should probably see if there are any hunts nearby. Shiro thought to herself since monsters also exist outside of the dungeons. For strong monsters, people would post up hunt quests that will have them form parties with other adventurers to hunt down the monsters in the wild. Her current plan was to go to one of these hunts solo until Freya contacts her. Walking over to what would have been the Adventurers Guild, Shiro saw that they've made small stall of sorts. Only one member of staff and a computer was at the stall while the others worked on clearing up the damage around them. Eavesdropping on what they were saying, Shiro realized that the stall was set up as a temporary station for adventurers to undertake some quests. Most of the quests were halted for now, as there was an influx of quests to clean up places or help build. They wanted to rebuild New York to a certain degree before focusing on dungeons after all. While they were waiting in the queue, Shiro glanced on her phone and checked on Kairosa. She was curious about the emergency raid they saw before leaving. So far, the information gathered about this raid was only limited to the first two bosses. However, the casualties to reach this far was redacted as to not shock the public on mortality rates. The raid is called Ancient Grave, an undead type raid that features a lot of undead dinosaurs that have high resistance to physical attacks. The first boss is Undead Tyrant Rex, lethal attacks that one-shot anyone who isn't a level 60 tank. The second boss is Undead Silverwing. Silverwing is a flying type boss that has abnormal speed and attack. Due to its nature as a flying type monster, the raid parties haven't managed to kill it yet. Once its health gets too low, it would fly away and heal itself. The 5 big families are currently holding raid meetings, talking about how to pass this round. Shiro thought as she read the forums. They're roughly halfway through the raid since the average raid would have around 4 to 5 encounters/bosses. Shiro mused to herself, I should probably join when I'm in C class. That is if the raid hasn't been cleared yet. Shiro thought to herself. Obviously, she wanted to give the raid a shot, but the fact that she would definitely die with one hit couldn't be changed. While it was true that she could kill level 60 mobs, there was still a wide gap before she could take on the bosses. Hence why she only farmed the first floor of the dungeon with Een. After waiting for quite a while, it was finally Shiro's turn. Have you got any hunting quests outside of the city? Shiro asked with a smile. The receptionist paused for a second before nodding. I'll go have a look right now, hang on. She replied as she tapped away at the computer. We currently have 3 open hunts. 2 are level 50 while 1 is level 25. She said, turning the computer around and showed Shiro the quests. Oh, can you show me where they are? Shiro asked. That I can't do unless you're level 50. She shook her head since there's a strict guild policy. I'm not there yet, so never mind. Thank you anyways. Shiro smiled before walking away. However, what they didn't know was that during her talk, she had sent a strand of nanobots to hack into the computer and gather the data about the hunts. Level 50 Corrupted Nyx, a water spirit that has inhabited Lake Nora to the south of New York. Do not engage alone as her combat potential is significantly higher due to her inhabiting a large body of water. Recommended skill set, Lightning. Level 50 Ohm, Tree Spirit. A named tree spirit that controls a portion of the forest. Be wary of its life drain. Last seen location, Corn Forest, north of New York. Recommended skill set, Fire, Lightning. Level 25 Phantom Shifter. A monster that can shift into the appearance of anyone it had seen. Be wary of their sneak attacks. Last seen location, Houston Village, south of New York. Recommended skill set, Any element. Ohm and Corrupted Nyx sounds interesting, but not many have applied to kill the shifter. Shiro muttered with a slight frown. The shifter was an annoying monster that relied heavily on assassination. For low levels, It was a very dangerous monster. While it is simple for high levels to survive its attacks, the shifters were intelligent monsters that would hide and avoid conflict with high levels at all cost. Naturally, that meant the high-level adventurers would eventually get sick of it and give up. That left the shifter free to roam around. I'll kill the shifter first while making my way to Lake Nora, Shiro thought, as she might as well take care of it on the way. Plus, after she had a look at the map location of all these hunts, she found out that Houston Village was in the center between New York and Lake Nora. It takes a few hours to get to Houston Village by car. Unfortunately, there's no train, so I can only take the car. It doesn't help that Lake Nora doesn't have a train either. Shiro frowned slightly and scratched her head. A round trip by car would take roughly 5 hours if she didn't include the time needed for combat and the such. Tisk, annoying. Shiro clicked her tongue. Asterisk chirp. Amen? What's up? Shiro asked, seeing Ian trying to get her attention. Asterisk chirp. Ian pointing at her mouth, then at her stomach. You're hungry? Shaking her head, Ian pointed at Shiro, then at her own back. Flapping her wings, Ian flew around her before landing back on her shoulder. You want me to fly? Shiro tilted her head in confusion. Asterisk paw. Facepalming, Ian shook her head before pointing at her mount again. So you do want to eat? Ian nodded her head. Smiling wearily, Shiro took out some D-ranked mana stones, but Ian turned her head away. You want C-ranked one? Shiro raised an eyebrow. I suppose we've got quite the stock right now. Plus, we can get more anytime. She thought to herself and decided to let Ian have one. Scoffing down the C-ranked mana stone, Ian leveled up to 47. Shaking her head, Shiro looked at the C-ranked mana stone in her hand and had the urge to ingest it. Don't tempt fate, and fate won't kill you, Shiro thought before storing the mana stone away. Looking at Ian, who was focusing on digesting the mana stone, Shiro felt a little jealous that she could ingest a mana stone and be safe. Now then, I should probably rent a motorcycle or something. Cars aren't exactly the best off-road, Shiro mused to herself before looking for where the old car store would be. Looking at the ruins, Shiro glanced around and made sure that no one could see her. Metal and lightning swirled around her hand as she placed a device on the rubble. Hopefully, she should be able to find a motorcycle inside the broken-down building. Even if it's destroyed, she could just fix it up using nanobots. Bingo! She smiled, seeing a positive result appear on the device. Moving the pieces of debris away, Shiro saw a red and white motorcycle snapped in half. Not bad, Shiro muttered before storing it away into her inventory. Going through the blueprints in her mind, she was going to add some parts to the motorcycle that shouldn't even exist in this era. Storing the motorcycle in her inventory, Shiro left the area to look for an isolated area for her to modify the vehicle. Jumping up on one of the destroyed skyscrapers, Shiro looked around and saw a few prime locations. That one, she muttered, leaping off the building and jumped towards the area using her swords as platforms. Naturally, she made sure that no one could detect her. Landing at the location, Shiro surveyed the area to make sure that it was isolated enough so that she could go on to modify the motorcycle however she liked. I need to make sure that no one could accidentally stumble in here while I'm working, she thought to herself before setting up wires all over the place. Seeing the area secured, Shiro nodded to herself and pulled out the motorcycle. Getting a better look at the motorcycle, Shiro couldn't help but whistle at how nice it looked. Not too shabby at all. Shiro smiled. Flexing her fingers, she created a few tools to help her repair the motorcycle first. The main area of damage is around the center near the engine. The fuel tank itself is dented and could lead to potential leaks. The wheels are bent with the rotor being completely snapped in half. Brakes are non-existent and the transmission completely in shambles, she muttered whilst looking at the motorcycle in closer detail. Fuel tank can be replaced by a mana converter. I can probably reinforce the chassis itself for more durability, and the wheels will be exchanged for some nanofiber rubber and nanosteel. I don't need the transmission since everything will be controlled manually by me. Taking out all the components that she didn't need, Shiro first made sure that the overall motorcycle itself was usable with mana parts instead. Flexing her fingers, metal and lightning twined together to form several components that she needed. She created a mask and started to weld the parts together. Asterisk TZZZ TZZZZ TZZZZ. As Shiro was working on fixing the motorcycle, In had digested the mana stone and had asked her for one more. Just take it. Shiro dismissed In and gave her another C-ranked mana stone. She wanted to finish this motorcycle quickly, therefore, didn't waste any time on entertaining In. However, the effects of the mana stone seemed to have diminished as In wasn't able to level up. After several minutes of wielding parts and connecting them through mana channels on the motorcycle, Shiro injected some mana into it and saw the parts light up. Bingo! She grinned seeing her modifications successful. Naturally, her replacement of the parts would make one wonder about whether or not she could have just made from scratch. The answer is yes, but it would bear fewer risks if she had a base to work with. Not to mention, it would also lighten the burden on her mana links. Her next tasks would naturally be adding new features along with a redesign in the appearance. Once she was done, the original white and red design was replaced by black and red. In between the panels, a soft neon red glow could be seen due to the mana converter supplying mana to the entire vehicle. Now for some upgrades. Shiro thought with a grin. This was her favorite part since she was going to add some of the must-have upgrades from her old world. Her first upgrade was the natural mana absorber that would get mana from the surroundings. The next upgrade would be the chassis converter followed by navigation system, sonic thrusters, off-road module, hyper module, and the underwater module. However, after creating these upgrades, she could feel her body hurt from the strain. Tisk, seems like this will do for now, she muttered in annoyance. If she was given more leeway with her upgrades, she could have made this the most insane vehicle of this time. Though it wasn't without its risks as well. Hence when she added the chassis converter. With this, she'll be able to interchange the appearance of her motorcycle. The first appearance was that of a normal motorcycle which wouldn't bring any suspicion onto her. The second appearance was the more efficient appearance that contained parts and concepts not invented in the current time. She was about to get onto the motorcycle when she realized a small predicament. Her current outfit wasn't suited for riding a motorcycle. The main problem was the skirt, but that can be easily fixed. Waiting for a short moment for her mana to regen, Shiro flexed her fingers and created a thin layer of nanotech over her entire body. It took a moment, but the final shape was some pants and a jacket. Moving her body around to make sure that the fit was okay, Shiro stored the motorcycle away. Leaving the area, she made sure she was alone before placing the motorcycle on the road. "You can sit here," she said, pointing at a small cabinet at the front. Asterisk chirp. In chirped happily seeing a small room made just for her. The inside of the cabinet was heated up slightly so that she was comfortable. Snuggling herself inside the small cabinet, In closed her eyes. Shiro only smiled lightly before pulling up her face mask. Readying her hair into a ponytail, she hopped onto the motorcycle and turned everything on. Humming with a softly, neon lights seeped through the edges of the panel, giving it a futuristic look. Tapping the navigation system, Shiro saw a 3D map appeared in front of her with the route towards Houston villages highlighted in red. With her destination and route fully calibrated, Shiro revved the engine before driving out of the city at a moderate pace. She couldn't suddenly start speeding through the city now, could she? However, once she left the city, there were no restraints. Pushing her heel down, Shiro flicked a switch before twisting the handle. Asterisk Kish. The panels started to shift around as boosters formed around the back of the motorcycle. Asterisk boom. Letting out a thunderous pulse of mana, the motorcycle started to accelerate faster and faster. The people looking at her would just see a blur of black. Naturally, with this kind of speed, one would struggle to see the surroundings. But to Shiro, this wasn't a problem since she could see everything clearly and control the vehicle without a hitch. While she was taking shortcuts through the forests, she also took this chance to kill some monsters. Her swords would float around her as she would swing them towards any monsters that would appear in her range and collect the loot instantly without caring about the mana stones. Of course, there were some monsters closer to level 50, but Shiro easily skidded past them and continued her journey. It didn't take long for her to arrive just outside the village. Hopping off the motorcycle, she disguised herself. Aina, LVL 27 Ice Mage. That way, the shifter would let its guard down and show itself. Plus, she didn't want rumors of her being able to disguise herself, so she changed her name to Aina. We're here, Shiro said, patting Yin's head to wake her up. Asterisk chirp. Opened her eyes groggily as she looked at Shiro. We're here, but I want you to fly above the village and keep an eye out until I call for you. Asterisk chirp. Nodded and flapped her wings. Storing the motorcycle away, Shiro got herself into the mindset of a young girl that has a slight hero complex and wanted to help everyone. Fufufu, this should do. Shiro grinned. Her entire aura had shifted over, and if one didn't know her personally, they would think that she was a twin. She even adjusted her hairstyle and made some contact lenses that changed her eye color to red. Her current appearance was a girl with red eyes, a white robe dress, stockings, and boots. Naturally, they weren't monster cloth, but instead, normal fabric. As for her hair, she let it down and braided a few strands to frame her face. Walking with a slight skip to her footsteps, Shiro had a carefree smile on her face, but made sure to keep an eye out. Entering the village, she naturally attracted some eyes since she was extremely beautiful and her aura was completely out of place. Everyone in the village had a slightly depressing aura due to the shifter killing people day after day. Ano, excuse me? Do you know where the shifter is? Shiro asked with a smile. Why do you want to know? The woman glanced at her with dead eyes. Because I'm gonna kill it. Hee. Shiro grinned and showed her a spear made from ice. Obviously, she weakened it to the power of level 27s. Overestimating yourself? The woman sighed. No. Trust me, I've killed a lot of monsters, you know. Shiro pouted and conjured up several ice spears that floated in the air. Fine. I'll get the other villages to tell you what they know. The woman sighed tiredly. She had seen quite a few young adventurers come, and not one survived. Anyone higher level couldn't find the shifter and gave up. Following the woman, Shiro saw a few patrolmen walking around. Only level 20. They haven't even classed up yet. Shiro thought to herself. Arriving at the village center, most of the villagers have gathered. Shiro made herself a small platform and made sure she was a head taller than everyone. So, my name is Aina. I'm the adventurer that will help you kill the shifter since he had killed a lot of people. Is this everyone in the village? Shiro asked. This is everyone. The village leader nodded his head. Sending some mana into her contact lens, Shiro sent out a thin pulse of mana to the corners of the village and found out that he wasn't lying. Okay, so can we all line up? I got a new item from the guild that helps me see who's the shifter. It will inject some mana into your body and see if you're a monster or human. Shiro smiled and pulled out a pair of white gloves. The guild has something this good? The village leader widened his eyes in happiness. The faster they take care of the shifter, the better. Yes. It was hard to get this from the guild since it was normally a tool used on higher levels. But we can't just let a monster terrorize this place, can we? As long as I'm here, I'll do my best to help. Shiro smiled sweetly. Thank the Lord. The leader prayed in relief. Shiro had to resist the urge to slap the old man. What do you mean, thank the Lord? This princess is going out of my way to help you guys. Yes, indeed. Can you bring a table, please? Of course. Right away. After they brought a set of table and chairs, Shiro sat down and started to examine everyone. While they do feel a pulse of mana, it was mainly Shiro doing it for effects. While it does allow her to see who is monster and who is human, she doubts the shifter would be dumb enough to stand at the front. As she continued to examine the people, she made sure that her face would slowly drain of color. After going through roughly 25% of the people in the village, Shiro's face was dangerously pale. Miss Aina, are you okay? One of the guards asked worriedly. It's fine, just it takes some of my mana to use these gloves. Shiro replied with a weak smile. Why don't we continue this after a while then? We'll get you a place to rest and mark off every who has already been examined, okay? He suggested. But we're already troubling Miss Aina so much. This is the least we can do. He patted his chest. In that case, then thank you, Shiro said after taking a deep breath. The crowd slowly dispersed as the guards took the identities of people who had already been examined. Walking away from the scene, Shiro saw a crying girl by the road. "What's the problem, darling?" Shiro asked with slight signs of sweat on her face. "My friend's Hick said that I'm Hick the Shifter," she said between tears. Don't cry. Why not let this big sis examine you? That way you can prove you're not the monster." Shiro smiled and put on the gloves. However, her legs buckled, causing her to fall backwards. "Are you okay?" the girl asked with worry. "Yeah, it seems like I don't have the mana to use the gloves anymore. I'm sorry. We'll have to do this tomorrow, is that okay?" She smiled apologetically. "Let me help you." She offered her hand as Shiro nodded and tried to get up but failed. "It's fine. I'll just rest for a moment and I'll be fine." The girl grinned, seeing her so weak. Their location was just right in the way that no one would be able to arrive to help her quick enough. Seeing as this was the perfect moment, she slashed towards her with a dagger. "Idiot." Shiro's aura reverted to normal in an instant and pinched the dagger. "Huh." The shifter widened her eyes in shock, seeing Shiro recover instantly. She had made sure that Shiro was completely weak before making a move. Realizing she was tricked, the shifter tried to run away, but Shiro was faster. Punching the elbow, she broke the shifter's arm and ripping off her jaw with ease. Even though the shifter was in the form of a young girl, she wasn't fazed at all. Once it was dead, it would revert back to its original form after all. It tried to struggle, but several ice spears had pierced its body and killed it. Grabbing the corpse, that was now in its original form, she brought it to the villagers and explained the situation before leaving. They wanted to host a party for her, but she rejected with the excuse that she needed to report this quickly. Getting on her motorcycle once more, Shiro called Ian down before making her way to the lake so that she could kill the corrupted Nyx. The corrupted Nyx, a magic-based monster that has extreme control regarding the element it is attuned with. Basically, the water version of me, Shiro thought whilst driving towards the location. Unfortunately for her, that means she can't do sh*t, she grinned. Arriving at the lake, Shiro saw that no one was around. Well, that makes sense. No one would be willing to live next to a lake where a strong monster lives. Storing her bike away, Shiro tapped on Yin's head and had her rest on a nearby tree since she wanted to receive 100% of the EXP that was awarded from a relatively high-level monster. Walking up to the lake, she sent out a pulse of mana to see if she could detect anyone. Feeling a reaction from the center, she knew that she found her target. "No one's around, so I can go full power." Shiro chuckled as she stepped onto the lake. *KRRR. Ice started to form under her feet and created a small platform for her. Walking to the center, Shiro saw the surface ripple as water tentacles erupted out and lashed towards her. "So we're starting already? Fine, this princess shall play along," she said, smile, and swiped her hand left. *KRRR. A blizzard exploded out with her in the center and froze the water with ease. "Come out," Shiro said casually as if this was just an everyday walk. The water around her started to shift, but the corrupted Nyx didn't show itself. "Makes sense," Shiro chuckled. Slamming her palm into the ground, a giant magic circle expanded outwards. "Frozen Hell, Ice Drake's Feast, *Yura." A giant ice drake clawed its way out of the magic circle and slammed its body into the water around Shiro, freezing them in the process. "Not done yet." She grinned and put more mana into the magic circle. "Frozen Hell, Frozen Slumber, *KRRR. Ice started to spread out from her as it attempted to freeze the entire lake. Naturally, she didn't allow it to freeze the entire lake, but only a small portion since she knew the limits of her links right now. She wasn't about to reveal her weakness. Beta. Understanding the danger, the corrupted Nyx conjured a giant wave from the areas that haven't been frozen yet and sent it crashing towards Shiro. Shiro, on the other hand, wasn't intimidated by the wave at all. Flicking her finger upwards, a giant ice wall was erected around her, protecting her from the wave. The ice started to crack apart, causing Shiro to frown. While my ice does counter her water, she can still affect my ice to some degree. Stomping her foot down, Shiro created a tall platform and launched her high above the lake in order to avoid the crashing waves. However, the moment she jumped up, several water dragon heads erupted out of the water and thrashed towards her. Che, annoying. Shiro clicked her tongue. Raising her arm above her head, Shiro narrowed her eyes and gathered lightning in her palms. Forming a lightning bolt, she twisted her body and threw the lightning bolt at the incoming dragons. Asterisk boom. A thunderous boom rang out as the bolt split itself apart to strike all of the dragons. The water bubbled and started to evaporate. The dragons tried their best to reach her but fizzed away before they could even get close. Tapping her necklace, Shiro stepped on the ascendant dream and launched herself towards the lake. She could pinpoint the corrupted Nyx due to the mana signal she felt from the Nyx when she conjured the water dragons. There. Shiro grinned. Frozen Hell, Calamity Trident. Twisting her body, Shiro grabbed the trident and launched it towards the lake. Just to make sure that the Nyx wasn't able to escape, Shiro followed it up by using Ice Chain. However, the chains missed their target. Narrowing her eyes, Shiro flicked her wrist and retrieved the trident. Activating her passive to float above the water, she clicked her tongue slightly. The best way would be to freeze everything, but I don't think my mana links can withstand that kind of pressure. Shiro thought to herself in annoyance. The main problem was actually hitting the Nyx. Due to her being in a large body of water, she could be anywhere. Actually, an idea popped in her head as she grinned. Since she couldn't strike at her accurately, she should just bombard the entire place to force her out into the open. Naturally, the best element for this would be lightning. Dismissing the trident, Shiro stood on her sword and gathered mana into her palms. 2 sets of Tier 2 magic circles started to appear as they were bright yellow in color. Lightning would spark on the rings every so often as it slowly expanded in size. Flicking her wrists, Shiro sent the magic circles into the air along with 3 swords. Asterisk BZZZ. Lightning shot out of the first magic circle and coated the swords in a thin layer of electricity. Taking a deep breath, Shiro controlled her swords to fly through the second magic circle, which in turn empowered the intensity of the lightning along with the speed of the swords. Asterisk boom. As if they were streaks of heavenly lightning, the swords collided with the lake and sent sparks of electricity ripping through the entire lake. Asterisk arg. Shiro could hear the Nyx cry out in pain as she grinned and launched herself towards the source. She could see a water spirit crawl onto her ice. Her body would flicker with lightning every so often, causing her to writhe in pain. Looking up, the Nyx saw Shiro and quickly tried to retreat by shifting herself into a body of water. Not on my watch. Activating Ice Domain, Shiro slammed into the ice sheet that she had created, which caused ice spikes to erupt outwards with her in the center. One of the spikes managed to hit the Nyx and started to freeze her slowly. However, Shiro wasn't done. She couldn't risk the Nyx's escape after all. Pivoting on her foot, Shiro created several magic circles around her before pushing her arms out and enlarged them so that they covered the entire area. Ice Palace. Shiro commanded as the circles started to rapidly absorb the ambient mana in the area. Asterisk KRRR. Large palace walls erupted upwards, sealing the location and prevented the Nyx from having a chance of escape. Standing in front of a throne made from ice, Shiro stared at the half-frozen Nyx below her. Even now, she was trying her best to struggle. Futile. Shiro shook her head since everything inside the ice palace was under her control. You're in this princess's domain now. Calm yourself so that you may have a swift death. Shiro grinned and raised her hand. Rows upon rows of magic circles lit up on the palace walls as spear tips could be seen peeking out from the magic circles. Die, she said coldly before bringing her hands down like a queen commanding her army to advance. Asterisk bang 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 bang. The spears shot forth like an unending tide of arrows and repeatedly pierced the corrupted Nyx who couldn't move. The bombardment continued for a while before stopping. Looking at the spear-riddled body of the Nyx, Shiro walked over to her and grabbed her sword. Coating it with shadows that were augmented by Calamity's will, she swung the sword down mercilessly. After killing the corrupted Nyx, Shiro saw a series of notifications appear in the corner of her peripherals. Special monster slain. Level 50 Corrupted Nyx. Awarding bonus EXP due to level difference. Special item gained. Self-made skill recognized. Frozen Hell. Ice Palace. Awarding 100 stat points. Level up. 47-48. Lucky. She muttered with a smile. Flicking her wrist, she thawed the ice palace and made her way back to Een. While she was walking back, Shiro decided to check the item that she had gained. Water Spirit's Heart Essence, LVL 50 consumable. Consumed to gain a small portion of the Water Spirit's stats. Hey, that's quite a rare drop. Shiro mused with a smile. Just like how people could eat monster flesh, one would gain an essence from an elemental spirit that would give the consumer benefits. However, one would normally receive a normal essence rather than a heart essence. The difference between the two was the amount of bonus they gave. Normal essences would give plus 200 points in the area the monster was most proficient in. In regard to the water spirit, it would be INT. However, the heart essence would give benefits to all the stats. Plus, it wasn't limited to 200 points. If the Nyx had allocated all her points to INT, that meant Shiro would get quite a substantial amount of INT. But that also meant that if the Nyx had barely put any stats into the area, the points Shiro gets would also decrease. Well, it's better than nothing. She shrugged her shoulders before retrieving the heart essence from her inventory. Holding the essence in her hand, she saw that it was somewhat similar to a mana stone. Throwing the essence in her mouth, Shiro could feel a foreign wave of mana pulse through her body before merging seamlessly with her own mana. Water Spirit's Heart Essence consumed, plus 150 STR, plus 250 VIT, plus 650 INT, plus 100 AGI, plus 100 Dex, plus 50 Def. Smiling at the bonus stat points, Shiro checked her stats. Name, Shiro. Race, Snow Girl, evolution criteria yet to be met. Title, Shadow Empress, Proficient Monster, 231/500 humans killed. Fratricide, One Woman Battalion, creator of the Frozen Hell series, incomplete. Ice Princess, creator of Een Style Azura's Path. Level, 48. Class, Snow Girl, Snowmancer. HP, 350, 570/350, 570. MP, 548, 100/831, 600. STR, 2000-2250, plus 100. VIT, 2000-2350, plus 200. INT, 4200-5300, plus 750. AGI, 2600-3000, plus 450. Dex, 2500-2800, plus 100. Def, 700-850, plus 100. Equals title bonus. Unassigned points, 600-0. Attunements. Glacial Tier 2. Lightning Tier 2. Metal Tier 2. Shadow Ed Tier 2, augmented with Calamity's Will. Balance, $802,045,190. Equipment, tap to display. Skills, Snow Girl. Tier 2 Glacial Magic, passive regeneration, blessed by ice, faded snow movement, glacial aura, glacial touch, glacial breath. Ice field affinity, cold illusion. Snowmancer. Nanotech Engineering Tier 2, bow creation, shield creation, melee weapon creation, armor creation, hand cannon creation, shotgun creation. Frozen Hell series. Frozen Slumber, Azure Hellfire, Calamity Trident, Ice Drake's Feast, Ice Palace. Ancient Healing Arts. Fire of Life. Een Style Azura's Path. Phantom Path, Azura Sword Path. Sword Skills. Refraction, Soul Sword. Other. Minimap, Inspection, Disguise, Mana Barrier, Lightning Magic, Tier 2. Metal Magic, Tier 2. Shadow Magic, Tier 2. Combust. Shared Skills, Een. Shadow Buff, Tier 1. Ice Chain, Tier 1. Shadow Cloak, Tier 1. Shadow Talon, Tier 1. Rift Walker, Tier 1. Absorption/Redirection, Tier 1. Shadow Affinity, Tier 2. Dark Seraphim, Tier 2. 2 more levels to go till I can see what class-up path I want to take, she muttered lightly. Considering everything she had done up to her current level, she should be able to get decent class-up options. However, as she wasn't too familiar with how monster classes are determined, she could only wait and see. I know one of the options would probably lead up to Snow Woman, but I should avoid that since I haven't heard of anything past a Snow Woman, so it could limit my growth. The second option should be something to do with how I've performed up till now. I've mostly gone with gun swords, so it could be something similar to a magic swordswoman, but monster version. She thought to herself as she tried to guess what her class-up options could be. The third option tends to revolve around what my attunements are, skills, and how I've set up my stats. The most likely option would be along the lines of a multi-elemental mage. Shaking her head, Shiro smiled lightly and looked for Ian. She could try to estimate all she wants, but in the end, she didn't choose what class the system gave to her. Ian, Shiro called out as she saw Ian flying over to her. Thanks for waiting. She smiled lightly and gave her a C-ranked mana stone. Asterisk chirp. Flapping her wings in happiness, Ian scoffed down the mana stone like it was nothing. This allowed her to level up to 48, the same as Shiro. Glutton. Shiro chuckled. She preferred to enjoy the taste rather than to just scoff it all down. Retrieving the motorcycle from her inventory, Shiro remade her motorcyclist outfit and pulled up her face mask. Making sure that Ian was comfortable in her little compartment, Shiro did a complete 180 with the motorcycle and made her way back to New York. Her expedition on killing 2 monsters had been pretty fruitful. While the shifter didn't give her anything due to its low level, the reward she got from Nyx compensated her quite nicely considering the fact that she had received the heart essence rather than a normal essence. I should probably hack into the guild systems once more and mark those missions off as cleared, Shiro thought to herself. If she doesn't, people would probably waste their time going to the location for nothing.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.